Let me say a pleasant good evening to all. And as we reach out to God in a word of prayer, let us give reverence to his holy name. The Bible says, where the two and the three are gathered, touching the things pertaining to his name, he is in the midst, and that is to bless. So as we reach out to God this afternoon, we pray that he is in the midst of us. Father, as we gather in this setting to discuss matters going forward, God, we ask your blessings on everyone tuned in here today. Bless the moderator, bless the panelists, bless the members of the group, and bless those that are listening to the discussion held at this very moment. Let the words that come from our mouths and the mouth of our messengers be meaningful, educational, and inspirational. To all, we ask that you guide this meeting and take full control. Bless us all. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you very much, Brother Hilton. And at this point, we would honor the playing of the national anthem of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
St. Vincent, land so beautiful, with joyful hearts we pledge to thee our loyalty and love and vow to keep you ever free. Whatever future brings, our faith will see us through. May peace reign from shore to shore, and God bless and keep us true. Irene, now fair and blessed Isle, your mountains high, so clear and green, are home to me. Though I may stray, a haven calm serene. Whatever future brings, our faith will see us through. May peace reign from shore to shore, and God bless and keep us true. Our little sister island
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, hey brother, for the wonderful national anthem. And every time I hear the national anthem of my country, it just strengthens my conviction that it's the best anthem in the world. Thank you very much. I now turn you over to Mr. Ramon Diaz, the the treasurer of the Dynamite Cultural Organization, for the opening and welcoming remarks.
My name is Ramon Jose Juan Diaz. I serve as the treasurer for the Dynamite Cultural Organization, the proud home of the Dynamite Calypso 10. I would like to take this opportunity to extend a warm welcome to everyone both there in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and others that are there abroad. We are excited to have you with us for our third panel discussion. Today we will be exploring a topic that is not only significant, but also close to our heart, the importance of establishing a cultural hall of fame for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. This initiative aims to recognize and honor the contribution of an individual who significantly impacted our culture, ensuring their legacy and remember for generations to come. Thanks for being here and contributing to this important conversation. Let us celebrate and preserve our rich cultural heritage together. Your presence and participation are crucial in making this vision a reality. Thank you and welcome again.
Thank you, Brother Treasurer. Those kind words, that very inspiring opening address. Thank you so much. And as the moderator for this evening's proceedings, I'll move on. So let me join with the treasurer in saying a pleasant good afternoon to all of our viewers and listeners and all involved in this production. The Dynamite Cultural Organization, home of the Dynamite Calypso tent, have this year decided to embark on a cultural hall of fame for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. This event would be held on Saturday, 19th of April. And we would be inducting 5 persons, one in each category, each of 5 categories. And those categories would be performing arts, culinary arts, visual arts, literary arts, and legacy and heritage. Today, we are honored to have a very distinguished 5-member panel with us here today in the persons of Mrs. Nelsia Robinson Hazel, Miss Rainey Baptiste, Mr. Ricardo Grant, Mr. Michael Peters, and Mr. Peter Burke. Each of them very accomplished in their respective fields. So we know that when they finish with this program today, all of our viewers and listeners would leave here very much more informed and educated. We are sure of that. So we ask you at this time to sit back. Please participate, ask questions, because as we said, the panelists, they are very, very versed in their respective fields, and they each are going to speak on one aspect of the Cultural Hall of Fame here this evening. And so we turn you over to our first presenter. This evening, our first presenter would be Mr. Peter Burke. Peter Burke is currently the Vice President of the Dynamite Cultural Organization, and he's also a proud product of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Grammar School, CUNY, which is City University of New York, and NYU, New York University. He's also the financial administrator of AVS, the Science and Technology Society. He's a member of the Society of the American Institute of Physics. Beyond his normal education and professional field, Peter's true passion in life is culture, sports, and community service. In addition to the Dynamite Cultural Organization, he dedicates a significant portion of his time to various Vincentian organizations in the diaspora, including Vincide Committee, Vinci Cares Inc., and TSSS, participation in the Pen Relays, demonstrating his unwavering, I must say, his unwavering commitment to uplifting and supporting the Vincentian community. Today, Peter is going to speak about the conceptualization and the motivation of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Cultural Hall of Fame, the projects that is to be hosted by the Dynamite Cultural Organization. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mr. Peter Burke.
Brothers and sisters, a pleasant good afternoon and thank you for joining us for the 2025 edition of our panel discussion. We are thrilled to have you with us today for what we hope will be an insightful and engaging conversation. We, St. Vincent and Grenadines, possess a dynamic and complex culture, a tapestry woven with unique traditions, artistic expressions, and historical narratives that demand enthusiastic celebration and diligent preservation. From the rhythmic beat of our pan to the captivating stories passed down through generations, our cultural heritage is a living chronicle of the resilience and creativity of our people. To safeguard and elevate this invaluable cultural richness is why the Dynamite's Cultural Organization have undertaken the establishment of the St. Vincent and Grenadines Cultural Hall of Fame, a project of paramount importance and, we believe, a necessary step in securing our national identity for future generations. This institution will serve as a formal and enduring tribute, a beacon illuminating the contributions of those who have shaped our artistic and cultural landscape. It will recognize and honor the exceptional individuals, groups, and organizations whose dedication and talent have profoundly impacted our collective identity, leaving an indelible mark that should not only be remembered, but celebrated. The Hall of Fame will not only be a registry for achievement, but also a profound source of inspiration, motivating future generations to pursue excellence in their own creative endeavors. To achieve our goal and structure the hall, we divided our culture into 5 distinct areas: culinary, literary, performing, and visual arts, as well as heritage and legacy. This, we believe, provides a comprehensive and structured framework that allows us to acknowledge and honor excellence across the full spectrum of creative endeavors, ensuring that all facets of our cultural identity receive the recognition they deserve and are preserved for generations to come. This system facilitates a nuanced appreciation of the diverse talents that enrich St. Vincent and Grenadines, moving beyond simple recognition to foster a deeper understanding of the skills, artistry, and dedication that defines our distinctiveness. The Hall of Fame, of course, will have rigorous selection criteria, ensuring that exemplary individuals and organizations are inducted, thereby maintaining the integrity and prestige of the Hall. Furthermore, the Hall of Fame will serve as an educational resource, providing information about the inductees and their contributions, fostering a greater appreciation for our cultural heritage amongst Vincentians and visitors alike. Ultimately, the Cultural Hall of Fame will be a testament to the enduring spirit and creativity of Vincentians, ensuring that our cultural legacy continues to thrive for generations to come. It will be a foundation, a fountain of knowledge that adds to the chronicle of our story. This structured approach to cultural recognition allows for the acknowledgement of a wide swath of contributors, moving beyond just established artists, prominent organizations, and celebrated performers. It acknowledges that culture is a living, breathing entity shaped by countless hands, not just a select few. We believe this broader perspective allows for a complete picture of our Vincentian identity. It shines a light on the often unsung heroes who dedicate their lives to preserving and promoting Vincentian heritage. It acknowledges the invaluable contribution of historians meticulously documenting the past, ensuring that stories of previous generations are not lost. It recognizes educators diligently passing on cultural knowledge to future generations, empowering them to carry the torch of tradition. And critically, it highlights cultural advocates tirelessly championing Vincentian traditions, often working behind the scenes to organize events, raise awareness, and secure funding. Furthermore, we believe our approach recognizes the transformative impact of cultural institutions, such as churches, which often serve as community centers and anchor points for Vincentian values. Museums, which curate and showcase artifacts that tell our story. Mass camps, pan sides, and Kaiso tents, bustling with creativity as they prepare for carnival. Establishments whose rhythmic music and vibrant colors are synonymous with Vincentian celebration. These institutions serve as vital hubs for cultural preservation, education, and engagement, fostering a deeper connection to our identity by providing platforms for collective involvement. They are not merely groups or organizations, but dynamic spaces where Vincentian culture is actively practiced and celebrated, reinforcing its significance across generations. The Cultural Hall of Fame is designed to both illuminate our rich and multifaceted culture in all its vibrancy and to honor those who have been instrumental in its upkeep, promotion, and evolution. Firstly, and perhaps most importantly, it functions as a vibrant locus for the very essence of what defines us as Vincentians. In an era where globalization often leads to the blurring of cultural lines and the uniformity of expressions to a dilution, if not erosion of traditions, the preservation and active promotion of our unique cultural identity, forged in the crucible of our archipelago of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, is not simply a matter of indulgence. It may even be an urgent imperative. This initiative, we of the Dynamite Culture believe, provides a platform for showcasing and celebrating the distinct artistry, music, folklore, and tradition that sets us apart as a people. However, beyond its role as a celebratory venture, the Hall of Fame serves as a necessary repository for the legacy of our cultural icons, paying well-deserved homage to the pioneers and trailblazers who have shaped our national identity and left an indelible mark on our society. By enshrining these giants of the past, we ensure that their contributions are not forgotten, but rather serve as enduring sources of inspiration and guidance for future generations. This connection to our ancestry fosters a deep and abiding sense of pride in our heritage, strengthening the bonds that unite us as a nation and a people, reminding us all of the rich cultural threads from which we are woven. The Cultural Hall of Fame provides a link, a vital link between the past, the present, and the future, ensuring that the spirit of Vincentian culture continues not only to thrive, continues to survive and thrive. And I'll pause here, Mr. President, and allow for any questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you very, very, very much, Mr. Book. Ladies and gentlemen, our first presenter. And let me just say that each presenter today will have a 15-minute window, which they can use 8 minutes for their speech, and the other 7 minutes would be for questions. So we invite our audience to send any questions you have, ask any questions that you may have of Mr. Burke, because we would like to, yeah, after each presenter, the audience, you can ask your questions. Okay, so if we have any questions, we now ask the audience to ask questions. Call in, ask your questions if you have any questions for Mr. Burke. Mr. Burke, you spoke very profound there. I picked up a lot of what you spoke about. I like when you said it's a profound source. The Cultural Hall of Fame would be a profound source of inspiration. Would you like to just elaborate on that part of it a little bit for me? a profound source of inspiration. Maybe so. Is it that persons would be able to go into a building in the future and look at?
That,
Go ahead. I
yes,
just wanted to.
sorry. Right. Yeah, that's part of our aspirational goals with regards to the Hall of Fame. Um, as we initiate this inaugural induction, the Hall of Fame will currently be, a virtual entity at the moment in terms of its space. Um, but we will have the biographies of the five inductees posted online. And so folks can log in via our our site, via the Dynamite Cultural Organization site, into the Hall of Fame. The eventual aspiration is that we will, yes, have a physical space, obviously in the homeland, that will house the Hall of Fame, so that anyone, Vincentians alike, visitors, schools, hopefully can have class trips where they can learn about the icons that have built our nation, where the current generation and generations to come can learn about the shoulders of the giants that they are standing on. It's, each successive generation stands on the shoulders and the work of the generation that preceded them, and we have to ensure that sight of these things are never lost, that they continue to be impressed on each generation and handed from generation to generation. One of the things that we have learned over the years is that culture is not innate. Yes, our culture is what distinguishes us as Vincentians, but it is not innate. It is not something that is automatic to our children. It has to be taught. It has to be handed on. It has to be essentially bequeathed as an inheritance from one generation to the next, so that it's not lost.
True. I got that. Well said. Well said. I do understand it, because definitely, something like this need to be passed on for generations and generations. Just like we remember Chateauyear every year on National Heroes Day. We should be remembering our other heroes, as you said. Every day, children should get a chance to go on into the libraries and read on that. So I think that's a great effort. One other thing, I'm not too sure if anyone's have any questions. If anyone has any questions for Mr. Burke,
Can
I'm not getting any calls. Yeah. Anyone on the stream, on the live? Okay. I'm not getting it coming in right now, Mr. Burke. But I'll go ahead. There's another thing you mentioned that I'm sure our listeners would like, to get a little more clarification on. You spoke about the link. It creates a link. The Cultural Hall of Fame creates a link between past, present, and future. Past. When we say past, yes, we know those who are alive. We can't say that they have passed. Things that they may have done in the past would have been past. But past could mean those who are gone to the great beyond. Is that you're alluding to, as you say, past, present, and future? That is something I would like to, and I'm sure the listeners would like to, hear something about that.
Right, past in the sense of the work that has been done. Yes,
Okay.
and that work could have been done by our forebears who are no longer with us. But
Great.
past from that sense, it's the it's the
Mhm.
job, we believe. It's the duty, not job. It's the duty of the present
Right.
generation to make sure that the generation on whose shoulders we are standing, that knowledge is transmitted to the next generation. So that's the conduit. That's the connectivity. We of the present generation have to make sure that the stories, the achievements, the accomplishments of the past generations are handed on to the future generations. And no past does not mean that the individual or group that we are have to be posthumous, because we would dearly like to be able to, in someone's lifetime, honor them. We think it's important that
Mm-hmm.
our icons, our giants, know what they meant to the nation and what the nation feels about them. And the esteem in which they are held by the nation. And
Oh.
that's one of the primary drivers behind the
Mm-hmm.
Dynamite Cultural Organization's undertaking to curate the St. Vincent and Grenadines Cultural Hall of Fame. We have to instill in the in our children, in each next generation, the tremendous stock from which they come, and that they ought to have immense pride in that
Yep.
and celebrate that every moment, every opportunity that they are given. A matter of fact, not even wait to be given an opportunity. As a course, it should be ingrained in them that we are from proud stock. I
Correct.
mean, you mentioned, let me just touch on one thing here. You
Yep.
mentioned our first national hero, Shattay. And one of the things and when the nation honored him, they chose the symbol of the obelisk to
Right.
erect a dashes to here. And that's one of the things that we are doing too here with the Cultural Hall of Fame. The symbol that we are going to use to honor the inductees will be the obelisk, with the inscription of the inductee in the category that they were inducted in, and their names and the year inscribed on an obelisk, something that we believe will take pride of place in their living room or whichever room in their house that they choose to display it. But we believe it's gonna be, the centerpiece of that room. That everyone who enters that room will be, wow, what is that? Oh, and there you have the story.
I
It's
got
it's you know it's 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 a project that leaves me personally,
okay.
oozing with pride. I mean, you see the smile on my face. This is why
Okay.
I am fully engrossed and with this
Oh,
project. Yeah.
okay. Okay, Mr. Burke. Well said, well said, well said. Um, incidentally, you're just 1 minute over. You're 15 minutes. So I'll have to move. We'll have to move on to our next presenter, and we'll leave the lines open for questions. After the second speaker, if anyone wishes to pose questions to Mr. Burke a little bit later on in the program. We'll give you the time to do so. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, thank you, Mr. Burke. Well done, well done, well done, well presented. And I'm sure that the public would have had a greater look and a greater insight into the Cultural Hall of Fame from your explanation. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Well, we now move on to our second presenter. Miss Rainey Baptiste, ladies and gentlemen, CMG, a very distinguished lawyer and a former Minister of Culture of SVG, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And as we know, she is affectionately known as Madam Culture. And that's because of the enormous contribution she made and continues to make in the field of culture, not just in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but abroad. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, her illustrious career spans a diverse field encompassing writing, lecturing, and the service as Commonwealth election observer in both Nigeria and Uganda. She has served as president of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Bar Association, a member of the advisory board of the prestigious Caribbean Law Review, and the National Heroes Advisory Committee of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and contribute her expertise as a director of the Institute for Politics and Governance in Latin America and the Caribbean, and is a member of the publication committee of the Parliament of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Ladies and gentlemen, well established, well versed if I want to tell you more and more about her, we would have to go on and on this evening, ladies and gentlemen. So this is where I give you none other than Madam Culture, Miss Rainey Batiste, and she's going to speak on literary arts today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon to everyone. And it's indeed it's a wonderful afternoon. Rain has stopped in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We have some sprinkles. I want to thank the organizers of the Dynamite Cultural Organization for the very kind invitation to be here as part of the panel this afternoon. It pleased my heart so much to see an organization, a Vincentian organization, taking up the baton in establishing or wanting to establish the Cultural Hall of Fame. The discussion of a Hall of Fame for the cultural arts it's long overdue. However, this has been around for some time. I recall that the discussion started in the CDC, the Carnival Development Corporation, some years ago, mooting at the establishment of a Carnival Hall of Fame. When we're looking at names to attach to various in the 21st century, we thought it would be part of the policy discussion in any event as we look at the broad tapestry of our culture. We do not want to lose anything. Starting at the beginning, I would say the writings are in stone, recorded in many petroglyphs across the landscape of St. Vincent, in Yambu, in Leyu, in Barley, at Argyle, at Pettibodel, and Bookment. Something is recorded there. We just do not know what it is. I tried, when I was Minister of Culture, to get some sort of translation of what it could possibly mean in engaging persons from Cuba, from their monuments division, and as well from through Egypt, because they do have a long history of being able to interpret the hieroglyphics in the Gaza and in Egypt itself. That, however, is also another work that has to be taken up. So the writings in St. Vincent go back to that age. Now we are in the 21st century. We have to provide something that will be dedicated in the Hall of Fame for the cultural arts. You can begin the process by building a virtual Hall of Fame, which is what I heard the former speaker deal about, because we were always trying to figure out where would we put this Hall of Fame. But thank God for technology, you can have it virtually, and dedicating it to various aspects of cultural expression. For the purpose of this first discussion here this evening, I've chosen a few areas of expression as I've been asked to focus on the literary arts. I've been made aware that the audience looking and listening will be a mixed one, Vincentians and other persons. As a young man said to me 2 weeks ago, that in another forum, that he was listening to aspects of nation building he never heard before in his life, and he is under the age of 30. So that this privilege that we are having today, we have to consider it a privilege, because there will be many persons who would never have heard about persons who can possibly be nominated in the Hall of Fame across the various cultural arts. And in the literary arts, what we're looking at, the written works, poems and poetry, plays, novelists, authors, writers of calypso lyrics, writers of other songs, lyricists, and the persons who tell stories in some areas in the definition of cultural expression. And on the literary arts, they include paintings and sculptures because they too tell a story, even though that format may be different. Designs. Designs are things that are done with paint or ink or pencil, and of various formats. We have outfits that are used for special occasion, hats, bags, religious songs, songs in dialect, songs such as patriotic songs. So we go back now to about the 1960s. That is as far as I was able to research, and do have in my own personal collection of writers of the 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s, the 1990s, and at the turn of this century. The persons in that time, very few people even know what he looks like, so it might be important. In the Hall of Fame, while you may feature those persons who you designate for the Hall of Fame, there are many other people who have written and formed that thought that guided a whole generation of citizens of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. People like Leroy Mulrain, Norma Keezer, Cammie King, Cheryl King, Shay Keane, Danny Williams, Sap Coombs, Ord Coombs, Tim Daisy, Cecil Blazer Williams, Marcia Harold Hines, Dr. Debbie Providence, Ms. Nelsia Robinson Hazel, David Darky Williams, Michael Peters, Anthony Sibbles, Miss McMaster, Dylan Oliver. Those are just some of the poets of St. Vincent. Then we go to the playwrights: Blazer Williams, Michael Peters, David Williams, Anthony Sibbles, Bobby Fraser, Chester Rogers, Dr. Edgar Adams, Dr. Earl Kirby, Sims Martin, Dr. Vivian Child, Nelsie Robinson. Then we go to the lyricists and writers of Calypso: Calypso Pete, Michael other songwriters like Mark Cyrus, who recently penned a piece for Canada entering the Olympic Stadium, Hans John, and all the other modern writers. Historians, Dr.
Are we off? Are we off? May I ask, are we okay? I'm not hearing anyone else. I'm not sure if anyone else is on. Okay, are we back?
Hopefully we are.
Is control, master control. Do we have master control in the house? Do we have master control? Oh wow. Yeah, it's still saying that the host has muted your mic. Oh, he's not unmuted. Ladies and gentlemen, let me apologize for that break in transmission. Our program director and technician said we seem to have some technical problems on the part of our speaker, Miss Batiste. So we apologize for that. And we were trying to get her back in. Hopefully she'll be back in soon. So we do apologize for that. But we will move on to our next presenter. And hopefully Miss Batiste will come back to finish on that very, very interesting presentation she was making. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, our next presenter today is Mr. Ricardo Grant. Ricardo Grant is more than just a Vincy Mas costume designer. He's a visionary artist who transformed history, folklore, and the essence of everyday life into breathtaking spectacles. A true mass man extraordinaire, Puzzle, as he's affectionately known, possesses the unique genius to weave together painting, dance, the natural landscape, and even our economic realities into powerful visual narratives. He aligns agriculture with vibrant color, tradition, and community aesthetics become intense visuals. Elevating the ordinary into extraordinary and leaving audiences in awe. And I could see he has left me in awe on numerous occasions. So that's so true. Currently, Puzzle continues to ignite imagination as a resident designer and builder for Mass Productions Unlimited here in Brooklyn, New York. And Puzzle is also the founder of Players International in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, one of the most popular mass bands, and they would have won a number of titles. So, ladies and gentlemen, Puzzle, no stranger to the art. Our next presenter here for you this evening, and Puzzle is going to talk about visionary arts, the visual arts. I give you Ricardo, Puzzle.
Good evening to the audience. Thanks for the introduction. Well, a lot have been said about the creation of this Hall of Fame and the importance of it. Now, there's so much people that could be inducted in this Hall of Fame. There are numerous people. We have people like, we could start talking about people like Roy Austin. Those people who were trailblazers for us in the early days, in the 60s and the 70s. We have people like, as I say, Roy Austin. We have people like Paddy Correa. We have people like Roy Ralph, Seven Knights, Moby Dick, Lennox Cully Hunt, Edison Shaggy John. For a short period of time, we had people like Lennox Dings Johnson. And we have still people like Junior Melbourne, Constance. And lately, we regret to the passing of Julian Pilling Pollard, one of the persons who really did a lot for Carnival in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Now, the Hall of Fame is a very important step forward in that it could bring the awareness of the people them who preceded us, who was before. But I am actually frightened for its continuity after these people would have gone. You know, because I'm not seeing wearing the youths of today seems to be very interested in a lot of these things. And I mentioned earlier Roy Austin, one of the pioneers, who would have twinned all of these aspects of carnival and sports and everything with his academic pursuit. And he elevated to that point wherein even today, a few years ago, he was seen as the George Bush president, George Bush II, had made him the ambassador to Trinidad and Tobago based on his academic pursuit. But this guy was a guy who did sports, athletics and cricket, football, and was still able to do carnival mass building and so on. He was the leader of the famous Bridge Boys in the 60s and the early 70s. Now, I think it is important for this Hall of Fame to come on stream for several reasons. It would bring, hopefully, it would bring to us the pride so that the youngsters today could feel the urge and see the importance of getting involved in all of these things. I remember when carnival used to be used as employment for people, where you had the tailors and the seamstresses who come along and did their part. And as a result, it was a source of employment. And many people would have made their life from things like that. No, I'm not seeing it. And as I say, it frightens me that the youths today now divert to a different kind of culture, not the kind of culture that we would want to have, not the kind of culture that would make St. Vincent and the Grenadines a better place. You know, so the coming on stream of this Hall of Fame is a very important venture. Hopefully, it would ignite that sort of fire and drive the youths today to see wherein this could be something for them to make a livelihood. Because that is what is important in today's life, for us to be able to live and thrive from something that we do. You know, so inducting these guys could encourage somebody to emulate them and to be a part of this thing. Like, for instance, recently we had the passing of Julian Pilling-Pollard, which I call the last of the Mohicans. A guy who really did a lot in terms of culture, the creative arts, handicraft, and things like that. But it was, as he told me, it was Cully Hunt, another icon, who he tried to emulate. You know, so if we should put in place these people, it could serve as an encouragement for the youngsters to now start to pursue a path forward for themselves in these visual arts, craft, and get involved. But I mean, I'm frightened as well because of the direction that things like carnival has taken. And there's hardly any history of, or if there's history, we don't access them, of the people before us who really did things and showcase where they got to. I heard Lady Batiste refer to people like Tim Daisley earlier on when she talked about poetry and things like that. And yeah, Tim Daisley did a lot. I mean, I don't know how much people ever heard about Arden Bess and these kind of guys. Arden Bess was a guy, when Tim Daisley staged the play, Tim Daisley staged a play on the grammar school grounds, Julius Caesar. And as he portrayed Julius Caesar, portrayed Julius Caesar, and he went on to have an illustrious career in Canada. And coming from the same Tim Daisy, we had people like Franklin Seals. I don't know how much people knew about Franklin Seals, but Franklin Seals moved on to Hollywood and did pictures, you know. So the art is important. Franklin Seals did. I don't know if anybody ever heard about the Onion Field movie. That was directed, put together by Franklin Seals, acted by Franklin Seals. He was an actor in it, and things like that. So the culture is important to us. The culture is the way in which we live. And this Cultural Hall of Fame could act as a hub, an incentive. It could stimulate the enthusiasm for people to want to do something. So I applaud the effort by the Dynamite Calypso 10, and hopefully we would see people coming on. Right now, as I said, Pilling died, and we only have one other carnival artist in St. Vincent at this point, having to do for 2 and 3 and 4 bands. That is Ozzy Constance, and that is not good. We should be having people like Dings Johnson, who's still alive, being employed to try to teach some of these things in some of the schools. I think things like that is necessary. And we should be, they should serve as an awakening and a call for us to really move forward and do what is necessary for the development of the country, because culture could enhance the economic growth of the country. Culture has done so much for other countries, wherein the artists and all of these people will be able to do things. I mean, even I myself made some good monies out of culture, going to Trinidad and make costumes for Trini Revelers, going to St. Lucia and do costumes for Lucian Spirits, along with the same David Julian Pollard and Junior Melbourne Constance. These are some of the guys that we need to look at as well. I mean, it might not be their time to be inducted, but they are here. And we need to get others trying to follow in their footsteps and see how much we could get this thing happening. I'll pause at this point for any question anybody would have to ask.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grant Puzzle. You've said a lot there, man. You seem to be a historian here today. Great knowledge of the past. You know, you seem to have a good grasp on a number of persons who would have contributed tremendously to the culture of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. You're remembering them quite vividly. You would serve very well on a Cultural Hall of Fame advisory committee, I think. I like what you said. But I wish you could just spread a little more, give a little more, expand a little more. You still have 8 minutes for your questions. But I just put one question. You said that Carnival used to create. Carnival was a source of employment long ago. Could you just expand on that just a little bit first? That's a very interesting point, you know, and I think our listeners may just want a little more clarification. When you said Carnival was a source of employment. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a source of employment because it created, well, Carnival at that point was where we would have to be able to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just buying some costumes from China with some feather, some swimsuit. We had to make clothes. We had tailor like Baha, and we had a lot of tailors who made their monies. We had seamstress like Miss Rogers. We had Dora. We had home in Cambridge, up at Tongue Hill. She used to sew for Hill Boys.
I remember her very well.
And when Carnival come around, these people would be enthused because it is where they make the money. We had the shoemakers, where you go to and get your shoes built.
True.
You know, we had the carpenters who would cut out your little standards and so on and join your two mop sticks together. We had where people learn to do like tinsmith, because chess piece was the order of the day. We had a lot of room and math and so on, them kind of thing. So we had people doing these things, and it ended up being the source of employment for them.
Right.
Here's where they made the monies. We had people learning to do pottery, because we at that time we used to mold faces and so on, paper mache and all of these kind of things. So it was employment. I mean, and there are a lot of people who come to learn to do welding, transform that skill to bodybuilding and all kind of different things, because they came into a mass camp where they learn to do welding, wire bending, they learn to do craft, make earrings, and all of these kind of things by using our own local materials that we had. You know? So in that sense, it was a source of employment for a lot of people, because around Carnival, a lot of people used to make their money.
I see. So are we to believe that the mass today has moved away completely from local materials, local designers, and local, handicraft persons, and are they ordering now things ready done from abroad or something like that? Because you seem to be saying that.
Yeah, it's just the ordering things from China, come up here and go down in Manhattan, buy a whole set of things from the Chinese and them, and they just come and fit them together. And the carnival, recently, before Scully passed away, I've been having a lot of discussion with Scully. And Scully was able to tell me that carnival really helped him in terms of his ability to do craft. And Scully was, before killing, the handicraft director.
All right.
You see, by just doing carnival, he was able to use using certain materials, the jopes, beads, and all these kind of things, and sort of give him this awakening to be able to use grass, razor grass, and all of these kind of things, copia baskets and all that kind of thing. So it created that cultural environment, that sort of cultural employment as well.
I got you.
You know,
see
and
your point.
He was saying to me that just before he died, saying he's very disappointed the way in which we've gone. Now it's just every man on the road naked. And our festival should not be like that, because we have changed from Carnival, which was a pre-Lenten festival, to a post-Lenten Vincent Mass.
Right.
You know, in which we should be able to showcase our talent, our culture. You know,
right.
Instead, we're just buying things outside from people who, ain't making nothing. And he was so disappointed he couldn't go down the nude, vulgar area in which people want to expose themselves now. And it worries me too. Sometimes I feel like just bowing out and forget about it. You know.
Yeah, for what I've witnessed myself, we seem to have moved away from the creative aspect of carnival, the mass per se. We seem not to be portraying, the local stuff anymore. When the tourists came long ago, they could have seen. I remember Roy Ralph brought Backstreet. The tourists could have seen a different design for Singer, Barclays Bank, the Anglican Church, and stuff like that, and those were very creative, very, very creative. So I think I would like to agree with you that we have moved away drastically from our culture, from that we have come to know, and it seemed to be just feather and swimsuit now. But you bowing out may not help that. I think with you staying, may be able to bring it back, in some form or fashion. Well, you may be very influential in that.
The thing is, how many more of the mass bands is willing to go down the road that I'm going down, to try to revive Carnival as it, as it used to be. How much of them? I don't know if it is because, well, previously, before this talk about this Cultural Hall of Fame, there wasn't any real incentive for people to pursue these dreams, for people to get
I see.
involved in these kind of things, even in the calypso art form. Now we have a lot of lazy people who really can't sit down and write a proper calypso. You know, all of these things. Musically, we had several bands in St. Vincent in the past. Now we don't have a single band. Only Patches next, give some credit to him, who's trying to see if he could still mobilize some people to come and play some music. We had Polyphonics, we had Asteris, we had Latinaires, we had Maguire's Combo, we had Envoy's Combo, we had Blue Rhythm, we had a whole set of bands. Now we have no band.
What you think may have contributed to that decline?
Well, modern technology and laziness in the people. I think
migration may have played. Migration may have played a great
migration
part
might
in
have
that.
done some of it too. But we
Yeah.
lazy. Recently, some years ago, I was home in St. Vincent, and I went to a funeral, and Brenton Bailey was the organist with the funeral at Methodist Church. And shortly after he done play a couple of hymns at that funeral, I see him get up and leave. So I asked him, well, why are you leaving? He said he have to go and play at a funeral in Catholic church. So why? Because there's no musician to play music. The guys in them seems to be mentally lazy. We don't have anybody, trying to do anything. So inducting some of these guys who did things, might just serve as an incentive. And I hope it should be. I hope it should be. Because I would love to see us coming back to, if not where we used to be, very close to it. Because we now don't have agriculture as we used to have it. So tourism is where we're going now. And these are the things we need to develop the country for tourism. When the tourists and them come in, they don't see the Chinese costume because they play in St. Lucia, they play here. They're all about. You see them up here in Brooklyn. So they don't need to see them anymore. We need to see some creativity. We need to see some costume. Royal built costume, man that can't live in one hole, and all of these kind of things. And as I say, Pilling God now, and I don't know who is going to continue, because Pilling is the man who led us with 3 consecutive banded years to climax the pre-Lenten season, and then win the next banded year to commence the post-Lenten season of Carnival. So we ain't really have nobody else who is trying to do something like that.
I see. Okay then.
And we need it.
All right.
I don't know if that too might help us to start to open your eyes and get Carnival going out in the schools. Get somebody in the schools, like I say, a Dings Johnson, who could go and teach some art and some craft in some of the schools, or you organize an area where he could bring his expertise to bear and so on. And yeah, things like that.
Okay, well said. Well said, Puzzle. You said a lot today. I'm sure that the statisticians for the Dynamites will be taking what you're saying into account, and will review a lot of what you've said there, because you've identified a number of persons who are eligible. In your opinion, would be eligible to be placed in the Hall of Fame, and certainly in my thing too. So we thank you for your contribution, and we do hope that the audience would be feeling questions in a while. You have gone a little bit over your 15 minutes, but it's okay, because we just like to move on. And as I said, afterwards, we would come back with questions if anyone has questions for you. And Miss Batiste, likewise, once she comes back in. Okay, then, Mr. Grant, thank you for that tremendous contribution and great knowledge. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said, you can call in with your answers. You can text your questions in and you call in. Feel free so to do. You can call on Facebook. You can call on YouTube, Dynamite's Facebook page. We do have someone monitoring it. So if you have questions, feel free to call in. You can call any members of the Dynamites on their WhatsApp. And they would forward the questions to myself, and so the panelists would get them. So, ladies and gentlemen, we now move on to our next presenter, our Mrs. Nelsia Robinson Hazel. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a towering figure in Caribbean activism, embodying a lifelong commitment to social justice, gender equality, and the empowerment of marginalized communities. And I know she's been doing that for a long time, since I was back home and was a little guy. A Black Carib poet, community organizer, and relentless advocate for multifaceted career spans decades and encompasses leadership roles in numerous pivotal organizations. From her presidency of the National Council of Women in 1983 to her coordination of both Caribbean Association for Feminist Research and Action, CAFA, and the Caribbean Gender and Trade Network. She has consistently championed the rights and well-being of women and indigenous peoples across the region, leaving an indelible mark on Caribbean society. Ladies and gentlemen, her topic today, she would be speaking on heritage and legacy. I give you the Honorable Lady, Miss Nelsia Robinson Hazel.
Thank you very much, moderator. Greetings to our distinguished moderator, our panelists, and listening audience. It is both an honor and privilege to share this platform. I commend Dynamite's cultural organization for planning and hosting this event, as the spirit of modernity causes too many of us to limit our knowledge of the now without taking account of the past and future. A wise nation of the indigenous peoples who first inherited what we know as the Caribbean and the Americas gave us the legacy of a proverb that says, "We will be known forever by the tracks we leave behind." I think that will adequately summarize not only what I want to say, but what the others have said and what Dynamite is leading to. From our dictionary meaning, heritage signifies the traditions, customs, and cultural elements inherited from past generations. Essentially, what is passed down to us from creation and our ancestors. Legacy refers to something that is passed down from a predecessor, often referring to the lasting impact of influence a person or event leaves behind. Both terms are related, but legacy tends to focus more on the impact left behind, while heritage emphasizes the cultural aspects received from the past. From our birth, before our cognitive skills develop, we are cast into a world of heritage. And I go back to our country's history. Our country was named St. Vincent by Columbus. However, in pre-Columbian times, the mainland was called by many names, which all carry meaning from some point in its amazing history. Known as Hairun, land of the blessed, from the settlement of the first peoples to inhabit the island. According to the language of different tribes, it is also known as Yulu or Yurume, to name a few. Under Spanish colonial rule, a land of rich forests and rivers was damaged and the native people displaced. Europe's fight for supremacy in the New World led to this country changing hands from Spain to France to the British. Each European power brought an addition to the culture and introduced the slave trade of both native and African peoples. Add to this Portuguese and indentured workers from India. The dominant culture has emerged as British, which has led to a high level of covering of the other cultures. There is a strong retention of culture of the indigenous peoples and the other ethnicities, but they are not readily identified because the history has not been written and taught in schools. The presenter before me was referring to some of the local aspects of culture that were being brought out at another time and somehow remaining covered. Take our Soufre volcano, the mountain of fire, with which we live. We are told it is too large for our island, but it is responsible for our black sand beaches and fertile soils, a tremendous part of our natural heritage. The national tree or flower, the Soufre flower, is found on no other country. Our national bird, Amazona guildingi, is endemic to our country. Our rivers and waterfalls are enduring parts of our heritage, preserving our rich biodiversity. In many ways, as communities, we are lagging behind in preserving these natural gifts. This is why I am mentioning them. Modernization brings us pipe-borne water, household equipment, and we do not pay enough attention to our environment and what we have inherited. The traditional foods of cocoa, cassava, arrowroot, other ground provisions are prevalent in our valleys, in our mountains throughout St. Vincent, which is why agriculture still remains to a large extent our main economic venture. There is also the prevalent use of wild meat, agouti, manico, etc., particularly to cook out the whole year. Our country is prolific with petrol gifts, as Sister Rini was mentioning. The writings of our indigenous peoples, some are near to us, Sandy Bay, Leyu, Barley. They are areas that archaeologists are happy to explore, but somehow not in the forefront in the mind of the people who live here. Some names of villages, towns, and islands derive from French, English, or Caribbean indigenous words. Leyu, Barili, Chateaubelair, and Petit Bedel from the French. Carib names, Kaliakwa, Mariakwa, Masarika, Obia, Rabaka, Washigoni, the indigenous name for our capital, Kingston. There are also different aspects of subculture in some villages. For example, our language accent. In the villages of Sandy Bay, Ovia, and Fancy, the accent stems from the original Carib indigenous way of speaking, that language that is now being revived through our relationship with the Garifuna. Accent of the people of Greggs is influenced by the original Carib language mixed with African languages. In South Rivers, there is a distinct accent that tells it is influenced by the language of the Portuguese. Looking at our religion, spiritual Baptist religion is very popular and has now risen to recognition through a national holiday that will be observed for the first time in this year, 2025. In the Grenadines, for many years, Canawan, Mairo, and Union Island practice African religions and traditions, one of which is the rain dance and the wedding meeting up. The Obia man, woman, is a modern-day remnant of the shamans or seers in the indigenous culture and the wise ones or eyes of the gods in the African tradition. The Christmas celebration, and with it the 9 Mornings festival, unique to our country. Our family names, original names in the indigenous language were lost with the coming of the different colonists. So there are French, Spanish, Portuguese, Indian, French, and mostly English names. There's a rising use of African and Chinese names. Take our oral tradition, the tea meetings, the moonlight games, the storytelling with roast corn and bread nut as our snacks. Our ancestors have left us sound agricultural practices, or root crops, which can survive hurricanes because, of course, they are under the ground and not exposed as our fruit trees, and science, for example, planting pigeon peas, corn, and cassava together, short, medium, and long-term crops, with the peas returning the nitrogen to the soil, which the cassava takes out. Medicinal plants, from which we make our famous bush teas, which were much sought after during COVID-19. Our construction has undergone vast changes, but construction of the sloping roof on our houses, which began with the thatch roof, which would not be easily blown off. So we pay tribute to those who embraced the heritage and left us a legacy of knowledge and understanding through their careers, advocacy, teaching, and writings. Many of these are highlighted by other members of this panel. And I will just mention briefly a few. There was Sir Rupert John. He wrote a book highlighting several pioneers in nation building. It was a very exciting read for me because it did not only name the persons, but you saw the lifestyle, the ways that they had to live at that time, how they conserve water, the tanks, etc. But Sir Rupert did not include any women in the book. Then there was Doc Kirby, a local archaeologist. He co-authored The Rise and Fall of the Black Caribs of St. Vincent, which opened our eyes to so much of the heritage and the exile, as well as the sugar mills of St. Vincent, which gave us an insight into what our rivers could do, because there was a factory operated by steam, by water in Clare Valley, where some rivers converge. There is Rhoda Reddock of Vincentian origin for her book on Elma Francois, who went on to become a national heroine of Trinidad and Tobago. Our comrade Renwick Rose and others highlighted the contribution of Bautamot. We hear about the riots, but this female's action, is not as visible as it should be. I think as well as we promote our food, our agriculture, there was Marcel Dyer with that radio program In a Calabash, very appropriate, as the calabash was that good vessel that was used for so many things back then, and now is mainly used for the shack, and not so much as a utensil for eating and storing water, for example. That radio program was encouraging us to use our local foods and ways of farming. And Margaret Sullivan, the nutritionist, also in the Ministry of Agriculture, who went around the villages encouraging the use of our local foods. We also had Ebenezer Duncan's writing on the history of St. Vincent, although it was a more Eurocentric approach, but it did give information. Of course, I must mention Dr. Edgar Adams for his several books, particularly that one, Lincoln the Golden Anchor with the Silver Chain, educating us on both the heritage and legacy of shipbuilding. And why am I giving this history? Because when that Hall of Fame opens in St. Vincent, the background and the history of St. Vincent has to be known, and our school children have to not only know what goes on in other parts of the world or what went on as they write their exams, they need to know what went on in our country and what led to what is taking place. So in closing, I repeat that from our birth, before our cognitive skills develop, we were thrown into heritage. And I personally remember as a child being fascinated by the thatch roof houses, which were different from the wooden house in which I live, and which was demeaned as trash houses, not thatch. As a child and until now, I was also fascinated by the large woven baskets that the farmers and fishermen transported, the harvest of the land and the harvest of the sea. As I grew older, I understood the craft of the people, particularly from over the river and Greg's, and took great pride in wearing my beads, my necklace of Job's tears, jumbie beads, and carrying my copia basket, part of the enduring heritage of our country's earlier development, which is made from materials grown in St. Vincent and woven by the skilled hands of our people. And a lot of that indigenous history is now being documented, it's being practiced as we more and more people are emerging and promoting these aspects. We also have to thank Father Mark de Silva. There are 2 books that he put out on our indigenous peoples, and one in particular gives us an insight into the French church and the Caribs and the artifacts. French church and the Caribs, the role of the church, and then the artifacts that were used before, and some of which are being used now. And so, we are at the point where this Dynamite project is set to play its part in preserving our heritage. They will be known for the tracks that they leave behind. I thank you.
Wow. Thank you very, very much, Mrs. Hazel Robinson. I must say, that is certainly an education we've had here today. Um, you have covered a huge set of information here today. You've uncovered a lot. Looking at my notes, I like the early quotation, and you practically ended that we'll be known forever by what we've left behind. Okay, and that spoke to practically everything you mentioned here. There's something you said that archaeologists are willing to pursue the petroglyphs, some of the petroglyphs in St. Vincent, to see what actually is written there and what is hidden there, so to speak. And but there seem to be no cooperation coming from locals. Is it that we're made to understand? Because I think you alluded to that their archaeologists are willing to do that.
The
If you could just
archaeologists are willing, and many of them come. But
Right,
their findings,
Mm-hmm.
for the most part, does not remain in the country. You will read it in some volume, in some magazine, in terms of it
Okay.
being, so that people would recognize what it is. I remember that in Barley, next to a man's house, there was that artifact, that rock carving, and the way it was facing, it was telling us something about the spirituality, and like facing with the setting sun, where the sun goes down.
Right.
And he was living there, and he would know people would come, but for him, there wasn't that meaning and where that came from. And eventually, because the land was being eroded,
Right.
It was removed, and it is put in the where it should be now. That school, secondary school move, it should now be in the central. That central school, secondary school there in Barley.
I see. Uh, yeah, but things like this should be of public knowledge. I tend to agree with what you're saying there, because something like this is very significant to our heritage, and this should be of public knowledge. Where it is now, it should be accessible for the public to view,
It is.
and someone should be able to give information on what it's about and stuff like that. Is there anyone at the moment you think with the knowledge of what it's about and what was written on
I
it?
think I think your next panelist will have a lot of information. MP
Okay.
will have on
Okay.
that, and
Okay.
there are writings on it. But in
Okay.
terms of,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that all the students, they may pass it in the
Mm-hmm.
and not know that that is part of our history from the people
Right.
who
Yeah.
were here before.
Yeah. But that's
Then
amazing because.
In Pearl
Mm-hmm.
Valley,
Mm-hmm.
how many years is it now? That there was that find. It is what is thought to be like an aqueduct. The spiritual Baptists were doing some
Mm-hmm.
work at their church, and they uncovered, this find that is now in
Mm-hmm.
the National Trust.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know if many people in Clear Valley itself remember
No.
that
No.
you have
Okay.
this evidence then
Mm-hmm.
of the
Mm-hmm.
people who were there and the kind of work, the skill, that was
Yeah. I
done.
see.
I try to advocate every year as a reminder. It was around independence time,
Mm-hmm. I
that
see. Yeah.
education should be wider.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, the people in the community particularly should be educated about, something like that, and it be made more aware of what it says and stuff like that. Particularly the community, it may be something of which they may be very proud. So I'm not too clear on why, it's just if you find things like this and it seems to be just lying somewhere quietly, hardly anyone knows about it.
Yeah.
But I take your point. I take your point. Yes. As I said, you said a lot. I'm not too sure if anyone else on the feed here today has any question for Miss Robertson because she said a lot. Anyone has any question for her? Could just raise your hand. Everybody seems to be happy with what you said. Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure. I'm not sure they're happy. They might be puzzled.
Okay,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify that and speak on that issue of the national flower.
Yes.
Miss Robertson Hazel said the suffrage tree flower is the national flower or tree of St. Vincent and Grenadines, and it's only found in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. That is kind of sort of incorrect. It has been discovered in the South American rainforest. For the past 45 years, I have been calling for a change in our national flower. Because if you ask Vincentians what is the national flower of St. Vincent and Grenadines, they will say incorrectly the suffrage tree.
Oh.
The national flower is actually the flower of the suffrage tree.
Yes.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it is not a tree or flower that is propagated in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Therefore, 99.9% of Vincentians have never seen the national flower. And as such, it's not a true national flower because it cannot be growing anywhere. You're not seeing it. I don't know how many members of this present panel have ever seen our national flower.
We've seen
I
the
have
tree.
not. I have not.
I've seen the tree, but not the flower.
Yeah.
Exactly. So how could we have something that is not seen, is not propagated, is not adorned in national monuments and buildings
Right.
as our national flower? So for the past 45 years, I've been campaigning without
Right.
success for a change in
I
that
think
national
now,
flower.
you're getting the breakthrough now.
Right. That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. Because one would have thought that by now we would know, the general public would know what time of year the flowers bloom, and then it would it would be easily accessible for who want to go and have one for souvenir. Is that public knowledge as yet that the time of year that the flower blooms?
Well, see, the problem with that flower and that tree is that it blooms every 25 years.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And originally it was found on the slopes of the La Sofia volcano. I'm not too
Right.
sure if it
Right.
can be grown anywhere else in St. Vincent
I see. I see.
because there were specimens only in the Botanic Gardens, and one of which has since died. So I think
Okay.
there's
I
only
see.
one tree now that exists in the Botanic Gardens, and that is
Okay.
why I've been calling for that change in our
I
national
see.
flower. It should be
No,
I
something
you
that
see.
Vincentians can have planted in their gardens, their own national buildings, and so on.
Right. Right. Correct.
now
Correct.
you
Correct.
have been
Correct.
strengthened.
Correct. Yeah. Very
Yes.
interesting. Very interesting. I don't, any other member of anyone else on the feed? Anyone else have a questions for Mrs. Robinson? She certainly said a lot. I have a two-page a two-page information from what she spoke a while ago. Two-page takeaway. But time won't permit me to ask all the questions. You know, I cannot ask all the questions. I leave room for someone else.
All
And
right.
right. So if no one else have any other questions for now for Mrs. Robinson Hazel, we could move on to our next presenter. And then, as we say, after Michael would have spoken, then you can present all your questions to the panelists. Okay, guys, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so we move on to our next presenter, Mr. Michael Peters. Mr. Michael Peters is a driving force within St. Vincent and the Grenadines, within the culture of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. You know, Mr. Michael Peters, it was his cultural officer within the Ministry of Culture, a former member of the Onto Calypso tent, in which he wrote calypsos for oh my God, in which he wrote calypsos for persons and performed. He himself performed calypsos on stage under the sobriquet MP. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, right. A former coordinator of Vinci Mars shows. He also coordinated key national events such as SVG Gospel Fest and the SVG Bible Festival, while simultaneously chairing the beloved SVG St. Vincent and the Grenadines 9 Mornings Festival Committee. Beyond these official roles, he is the founder and artistic director of the renowned High Room Theatre. And I know all of us, anybody from St. Vincent say they don't know High Room Theatre, nah, you're not a VC. High Room Theatre, showcasing his talents as a playwright, director, songwriter, and poet. His expertise extends to show production, event planning, and management, all further enriched by his prior experience as marketing and product development officer at the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Department of Tourism. Okay, making him a multifaceted leader in the arts, entertainment, and the culture sector. Today, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Peters is going to present a piece on the performing arts. I now give you Michael MP Peters.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Carlos rejected Providence. Until take over, right?
That's right. I will still take over.
Right.
Okay.
I first of all want to congratulate the Dynamite Cultural Organization for this initiative. I think it's a very timely one. And the Cultural Hall of Fame is for St. Vincent and Grenadines is certainly a great idea. After 45 years of independence, there's still no system of national awards except from the colonial era awards such as MBE and OBE, which are particularly useless in these modern times. So therefore, any initiative to honor our cultural practitioners and contributors is welcome. So again, let me highly commend the Dynamite Cultural Organization for this initiative. And I particularly like the idea of honoring individuals, groups, and organizations. The area given to me is the performing arts. Now, the performing arts comprises music, song, dance, drama, or theater. That means it's a very wide area to cover, so I'll speak briefly on each and given the time and leave the rest for questioning. In terms of our music, Vincentian music came alive in the 60s and began to flourish in the 1970s when we began to show less reliance on foreign music and turned our attention to the creation of local music. Our music mainly flourish and is interwoven with our songs. And the major part of our songs is the calypso, which tend to follow our festivals also, which carnival, nine mornings, our folk songs, and manifested and played on our steel bands. Importantly, each era has brought with it a different change and contributors to our music. In the early years, bands such as Latiners, Climax, Apertusis, Polyphonics led the way. People like Corin Morris and Plumie Lewis were very prominent in this regard. In the 1980s and 90s, we had such bands as Asterix, Exodus, Touch, Black Sand, and others, Signal and others. New Direction from Beckway. Unfortunately, as Puzzle had said earlier, we have come full circle when there are very few active local bands. In fact, we could say one or two in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Our steel bands have played an important part of our music, with bands such as Apocalypse and Starlip being around for over 25 years. We can't talk about Vincentian music without mentioning people like Frankie McIntosh, who was the main arranger behind our Vincentian calypsos and its development and popularity over the years. Tiny Peters, master of the steel band and also calypso. People like Douglas DeFreitas, who was a pioneer in recording Vincentian music and allowed many of our musicians and entertainers to record their artistic creations. People like Pat Prescott and his pioneering works with the New Kingston Chorale certainly plays Vincentian music through the National Music Festival, which was initiated in 1956 on a bigger stage. We also have to talk about our folk songs. Our folk songs came alive in the 60s and 70s, particularly in the pre-independence era, and spoke of life in our villages and communities. Unfortunately, again, our folk songs seem to have gone into dormancy, but creators of our folk songs like the renowned Alban Henry, Albert Lawrence, are names that must be mentioned. I think one of the most popular folk songs in the world is Moonlight, which is a historical piece in itself, a study of Vincentian history and culture, was created by Alban Henry. So our Vincentian music has played a significant role in the performing arts and continue to push this country on the international stage. So when we talk about Hall of Famers, the list will be long and the selection process difficult to select just one coming from music. Certainly people like Pat Prescott, Frankie McIntosh, Dougie Freitas, Corey Morris, Tiny Peters are showings for ballot Hall of Famers. And as I say, would make the task of selecting just one of them a difficult one. As we move to the area of song, as I mentioned before, music and song were interwoven. Song being the strongest area of our performing arts. Our song mainly came out of our festivals, most of which came from Carnival, lately Nine Mornings, Gospel Fest, and our folk and patriotic songs. Our calypso has been the dominant song genre, perhaps second only to Trinidad in terms of quality and production. In terms of our calypso became of age in the 1960s due to the efforts of people like Olson Peters and Baha Lawrence. In the late 1970s, 60s into the 80s, the Mighty Sheller, Lord Hawk, Toiler, Vibrating Skakes, and of course Alson Beckett Cyrus came to the forefront. In the 1980s, people like the Manage, Poser, and CP Hall were the leading lights. Not to forget people like Carlos Rejecto Providence and his role in the Onto Calypso tent, as was mentioned earlier. Our calypso music has pushed St. Vincent Grenadines to international stardom and fame, especially coming into the 90s and the 21st century, with people such like Kevin Little's Turn Me On, which remains arguably the biggest hit song to come out of the Caribbean. Skinny Fabulous and Fireman Hooper. Beckett, of course, is in a category by himself. Since 1975, he has been one of the leading lights in Vincentian music, followed closely by Winston Soso Scorcher and other persons who have contributed significantly. Our songs, it must be mentioned, can hold their own anywhere and with any country in the Caribbean. And St. Vincent and Grenadines has become known for producing some of the best recordings, especially calypso recordings. One must remember that the mighty Scorcher with Party Fever should have won the Road March in Trinidad in 1980. And of course, this was accomplished when Skinny Fabulous did it 3 years ago. Dance is not where it should be in terms of the performing arts. From the early efforts of people like Tracy Connell and Paul Anderson with Highroom Dancers, to Dr. Edgar Adams, Kibacus Gale and the National Performing Arts Company, and Marie Venner, the Junior Dance Club, the modern efforts of people like Marcia Providence with Carrie Ballet, Maxine Brown and La Gracia Dance Company. Dance has its ups and downs. However, with the creation of the National Dance Festival in 1994, it was somewhat stabilized, but we still not have seen dance back to the levels it should be. We must also mention the Creation Culture Club and persons like the Martin Brothers who were prominent in dance. Drama or theatre arts is the weakest area of our performing arts. This has suffered primarily from lack of a proper theatre, with only Peace Memorial Hall being available with limited spacing and other facilities lacking throughout the country for proper theatrical production. One has to credit the ULP administration, who took office in 2001, for upgrading the hall to some level of decency, but still not a full-fledged performing arts theatre. We still await, which has been promised in 1984, the National Performing Arts Theatre, which was promised by various administrations, but has still not come to fruition. Our drama or theatre began to show its head in the 1960s through the efforts of Tim Daisy, playwright, director, and the St. Vincent Players, with leading actors such as Elaine Deschamps, Mom J, and writers such as Bobby Fraser being part of the St. Vincent Players. That group was on the scene from the 1960s, mid-1960s to the 1970s, when, along with the light operatic movement, productions were held in places such as the grammar school lawn, as evidence of lack of proper performing theatre spaces in St. Vincent and Grenadines. In the 1970s into the 80s, you had the New Artist Movement, led by Cecil Blazer Williams, with persons such as David Darky Williams, Bonnie Millington, and renowned actors such as Ard and Bess leading the way. NAM is still around, but not as active as it was in the 70s and 80s. We commend them for taking theatre to the rural areas through the popular theatre movement. So the contribution of NAM to theatre in St. Vincent and Grenadines cannot be underestimated or undervalued or underappreciated. They really were the leading lights in the 70s, 80s, going into the 90s. In the 1980s, you had groups such as the National Arts Guild, led by Maurice Horn, who produced the first local theatrical production filmed The Bitter End for television. This group was around in the latter part of the 1980s. In the 1990s, through the efforts of the Department of Culture, you had the era of the drama festivals, which took our theatre and drama to a different level. The School Drama Festival starting in 1987, the Community Drama Festival in 1990, and the Primary Schools Drama Festival in 1994. Now the Primary Schools Performing Arts Festival, PRISPA, ensured an opportunity for youngsters as the nursery for community groups. Out of this era came community groups such as Hiring Theatre Company, Odd and Methodist Dramatists, led by Kevin Rodriguez, who are still around pouring a long battle on the theatrical scene. So those are the areas of the performing arts and some of the contributors who have made significant contributions over the years in music, in song, dance, and drama. List of contributors is long. I've only mentioned a few for discussion's sake. And as I said, I wholeheartedly support the creation of a Vincentian Cultural Hall of Fame. It is timely and long overdue as we seek to recognize our cultural artists in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Peters, for a very, very, very informative discussion there. You again have said a lot, and a lot for us to take into consideration, to be seriously considered, as it have to do with the preservation of the performing arts in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I want to ask you a couple of questions, but I'll ask one here now. The first thing I'll ask, you mentioned NAM, New Artist Movement, as we know it as, being a very formative group in the 80s and 90s, performing throughout St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I myself have attended a number of their performances. Very exciting and stuff like that. But you say they're not as active as before. Any reasons why they may not be as active as before?
I think, well, NAM started in 1972, and 50 years is a long time to be around. What happened? NAM and a lot of groups suffered from what groups like Hiring Theatre suffered from as we entered the 2000 migration. A lot of the members of NAM, the leading members of NAM, migrated. And as NAM and Hiring Theatre found out, it is difficult to replace talent.
Yeah.
When NAM and Hiring Theatre and other cultural groups were active, we didn't have cable television, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have cell phones. So that persons found themselves in community groups, in theatre groups, in dance groups, as a source of socialization, as a source of cultural development. But since the advent of these, you have people less and less being inclined to be involved in these organizations. I'll give you a simple example. From the 60s into the 70s, 80s, and 90s, every village had a community group. You had Lesco, Besco, Sesco, Vesco, all sorts of community groups and cultural organizations. Now, very few of these are active in St. Vincent Grenadines because people simply do not socialize on that social and cultural level anymore. I remember as a youngster to go on the block, I had to read Reader's Digest, Time Magazine, and other publications just to go and be part of the discussions on the block.
Right.
Now the block is certainly different. So that the whole socialization process has changed. People are no longer interested in being part of cultural and social organizations. And thirdly, rejected lack of a proper performance facility has discouraged and dissuaded many persons over the years. But as to wrap it up, migration, lack of interest, and facilities have impacted significantly on the theatre scene in St. Vincent Grenadines.
Right, because on most of the issues which you spoke, it seemed to be lacking continuity. Where organizations would try to put continuity into motion at an early time rather than wait until the first set of the original set of persons begin to go down in age, and then you look. I think it seemed like the organizations are not grooming. It might not be the case that they're not grooming youngsters early, rather than wait until you're 20 years old and your organization is 20 years old because you think the guys are the guys and ladies who are in the organization are doing a great job. I think you should be thinking about molding younger ones all the way. That seemed to be, to me, I'm not too sure.
It's just not that it's not that we're not seeking to groom. I think the present generation, the modern generation, the Y2K generation, as they're called, are just not interested in these particular things. For example, if you look at our music bands, we had so many music bands in Vincent Grenadines. Now you hardly find any bands. I asked some guys the other day, when's the last time you danced to a band in a fest? Right? What has happened? A lot of our musicians have gotten opportunities on the cruise ships.
Yep.
And a lot of them have traveled overseas. And like I say,
sorry.
and like I say, Rejecter, you know, when we were youngsters, Rejecter, we, to have fun and to socialize, required our friends to be part of that. But now you text your neighbor across the fence.
Right,
You don't
I
see your
know.
neighbor. You chat on Facebook and WhatsApp and all them sort of things there.
Right.
We didn't have to contend with television and cable television and the internet and cell phones. So those distractions have taken youngsters away from a lot of the cultural organizations in St. Vincent and Grenadines.
I take your point, but I don't know if I could draw a reference, if I could use a reference. Because you said because of today's technology that we can sit in our homes and text each other and stuff like that. But that exists through the Caribbean and the wider world. But I want to use Trinidad and Tobago as an example of what we are speaking about here. I don't know if you ever noticed Panorama in Trinidad. Let me just use youth panorama. Let me just use the youth panorama. You know how many bands Trinidad have, especially youth bands? See pan size.
No.
It's close to 100 steel bands. All right, every school, every village, every area possesses a youth band. And it's amazing when you look at these young players every carnival. And I notice that every single carnival, I always draw people attention to it and say, look at Trinidad and Tobago. Look at the amount of youths. Thousands of youths get involved in the steel band and play for Panorama every single year. But not just for Panorama, because these youths play through the year too, because they have Steel Pan Festival. Through the years, Trinidad and Tobago have a lot of activities with the steel band and clips and stuff like that. And when you look at the thousands of youths involved, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Just last week, we were looking at the panorama, and I mentioned the same thing to persons who were viewing it with me. And they came to the conclusion, yeah, boy, something had to be wrong with other countries. Look, how come these thousands of youths get involved? And this would take time for them to be involved and to come up to par for panorama. So that tell you they're practicing night after night after night. You understand? And so said so at the panorama semifinals last weekend, they were speaking about the same thing. About the involvement in the youth, and it's so heartening to see thousands of youths, could come to the pan and for panorama and dedicate themselves to it. Long hours. Some of them say they went home 4 o'clock in the morning, but they're back at the savannah to play 6 o'clock in the evening. So I don't know if it's something incentive or encouragement. I don't know. Maybe something that we are lacking. I'm not too sure.
Well, Rejecter, I take your example, but in Trinidad, the carnival culture is ingrained in the psyche and the culture of Trinidad and Tobago, as opposed to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And certainly a lot of resources and facilities exist in Trinidad that do not exist in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
So
the government of St. Vincent and Grenadines, the government of St. Grenadines from the Prime Minister initiative started the Pan Against Crime, initiative, which saw the growth of a number of steel bands. But I can also give you another key example. In the 60s with the Black Power movement and the struggle for independence, there were a lot of drumming groups across the Grenadines. Now, with the exception perhaps of Naked Roots, very few drumming groups exist. Right? Because the youngsters are just not interested in that sort of activity. Although efforts have been made from various angles, various sources and organizations to revive and keep alive our drumming here. I can give you an example from the Department of Culture. When we started the Schools Drama Festival in 1987 into the 90s, we had up to 21 secondary schools taking part. For the last few years, we have been unable to have a proper school drama festival because we can't find the youngsters, get them interested in being involved in theater. So we have not had a proper school drama festival over a number of years.
Yeah.
So that has been the story of St. Vincent and Grenadines, that this generation, lack of facilities, opportunities for educational advancement and travel and so on, have impacted us significantly culturally in this country.
So would it be wise for us to conclude that we do have a lot of work to do?
We always have work to do. It's always to find creative ways and means of getting persons interested and getting the job done.
Because one would think that is, sorry.
I am the coordinator for Gospel Fest, which was started in 2003. For the first 5 years, we had up to 23 gospel bands. Now we're probably down to 2. We had 44 dance groups. We're probably down to 3 or 4 now in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. That's a significant drop.
Significant decline. Something seemed to be wrong somewhere. I mean, what we are embarking on here today seemed to be, a need for more of this discussion throughout the country, and in different areas, different communities, and stuff like that, to examine what's going on. Because I want to. Sorry, go ahead.
Just to round it up, it can be summed up on, like I said, these 4 main points, and we must not forget that education opportunities to study overseas has become more now. So a lot of youngsters are taking the opportunity to advance themselves educationally. So persons are traveling. A lot of youngsters are finding jobs on the cruise ships. So musicians are gone and getting jobs on the cruise ships. Back in the day, we had so many bands backing up the Calypso tent.
Yeah.
Now there's a struggle to find a band to back up a Calypso tent. And we are down to just 3 or 4 Calypso tents. Then back in the day, we had so many because we had so many bands available. It was a joy traveling the country with first of all, Flames Out of Bible, then Black Sand.
There we go.
On tour, but those are bands. We don't have those anymore. Other musicians have disappeared.
So a person's stop teaching music, and person stop learning music.
I think it's just the interest. It's a generational cycle. That we didn't have the distractions that are now prevalent, or attractions, as they say, that now encompass this generation. So that person is no longer into what we were into when we were in our younger days. Plus, we must never underestimate the lack of facilities and opportunities that exist in this country. I strongly believe one of the failures of our administration since independence is to really get a proper performing arts center where we could have had musical, theatrical, and dance productions on a regular basis, which would have encouraged more people to get involved in these areas of the performing arts.
So someone is asking a question. They asked me to put a question to you. They're asking, rather than surrendering to technology, can there be programs in the various schools curriculum? Someone is asking that.
We have not surrendered to technology. We have just been acknowledged as a fact. And as a matter of fact, within the last few years, in the last 10 years or so, the creative arts program is now on the school's curriculum, and there are students who are studying that at university level, at secondary level and university level, getting involved in degrees in the creative arts. So that has now come as part of the school's curriculum. So we are not surrendering. I'm just speaking about the reality.
I meant to say this, Carlos. Okay, I got you. I hope that person
Sorry,
should have heard.
I
There
was
seems to
right
be
in it
another.
and I cut off. I'm listening to him, but you can also tell him, remind him that, and you might be throwing it out there for everyone else too. It starts in school. We can't surrender to technology. They can include these aspects, these cultural aspects in the curriculum in school, so it becomes a part of it. Because you mentioned Panorama in Trinidad. That's where the kids start at school.
Oh yes, the person
I meant to say this.
left a voice message
sorry.
as well, saying yes, it should be started in school, like it is done in Trinidad. But I think you would have alluded to that a while ago, Mr. Peters.
Well, there are
Yeah.
schools music program in place now. As a matter of fact, the Department of Culture over the years have had a schools band production where we invite musicians from the various schools to come together as part of a festival, school band festival. So
Okay.
that is in place. What happens is, what we find is the continuity, that when these young musicians graduate from school, they do not move on to bigger bands. It's the same thing that affects Calypso. You have a lot of juniors who sing Calypso, but they don't graduate to the senior level. We hardly find the numbers graduating to the senior level. Is that lack of continuity and interest that affects us culturally in St. Grenadines. It's not that we have surrendered all their dance programs. There are programs. The Department of Culture has 3 dance officers who conduct programs and workshops in the schools regularly, but there are not as many dance groups in the country as we should have. There's a school's music bands program, but like I said, the continuity after school, these youngsters are not finding themselves in bigger bands.
Oh, I got you. Okay, Mr. Peters. Well said. Okay, I'm sure that the caller, the who sent the question would have heard you. Seems to be sending someone else seems to be sending another question, but it's not coming in clear as yet.
There is something else, Mr. Peters, that you have to do. I am listening.
Yeah, I'm not too clear on it. The person was sending a voicemail.
There is something else, Mr. Peters, that you have to do. I am listening.
Yes, they were just saying there's something else you have to do. I didn't get that message.
No, what it is there, Mr. Peters, that you have to do. I am listening.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we have had a great presentation from Mr. Peters. Anyone else have any questions for Mr. Peters? And incidentally, we have all the other presenters that you would not have sent your question. Any question for any of the other panelists, you have the opportunity to do so now. I'm not too sure if Miss Baptiste has rejoined us. Anyone else on Mr. Book?
I'm here.
Mr. Book?
Yes. Yeah, I'm here.
Any question for any? We are being rejoined by Miss Baptiste. We incidentally she was cut off, disconnected earlier on, and we are happy that she's back to continue her presentation. Miss Baptiste, we're sorry about you being disconnected, but we're happy to have you back. If you were so kindly continue that inspiring contribution that you were in the middle of.
Okay, thank you so much for giving me the chance to be back with you.
Sure, thank you very much.
Very much. I think Mr. Peters indicated to me in the chat I was at the point where he was involved in writing
Correct.
Calypso. That he was involved in writing Calypso, and I had as my lyricist I had Shella, Brother Ebony, Professor, Mark Cyrus, and then Hans John. And I went on to other lyricists, such as Phyllis Purnett, who wrote the national anthem. I was told when she was at school, she used to you just ask her to give me a poem, and she was able to do it right off the bat like that during her school time. They're going to revive the memorial at her gravesite. Thinking in next month, they will be doing that again. And I want to compliment Mr. Peters because I had the opportunity. We were together for 10 years approximately at he's cultural research officer. And it was during that time that a number of books were published, patriotic songs that he helped to compile. The folk songs of St. Vincent, that was also compiled. And Manual of Calypso by Glenroy Sully Caesar. He did a handbook as well on Calypso. Then we had started the process of signature songs for March, which was designated as History and Heritage Month. And that theme song was written by Sully, March into History. Then Emancipation, where Emancipation Month was declared during that time. And we had Cornisha Crook penning the theme song for August for Emancipation Time. And the Junior Calypso and Junior Soca Monarch that came on in 2005 or thereabouts, starting to preserve their songs during the season. Then the Vincentian Folklore Booklet, we did, I think it was volume 4, Folklore Booklet, and the 240th anniversary booklet for the Botanical Gardens. Then the inauguration of Calypso College, which you know has continued it's gone past 20 years now. Calypso College with Mr. Stephen Huggins as Chancellor, where they do preservation of the Calypso art form and they have received recognition. Then there was the publication of the book on Fort Charlotte at the 200th anniversary. Then the Breathroot Recipe book with the Hotel and Tourism Association and the establishment of the National Sound Archives. Then we go on now to other authors. Dr. Jason Haynes, publishing book on sports law. That's one of the legal publications. I have not seen another textbook like that published in this part of the century. Then we had the archaeologist. There was a program that had started with a university in Washington, I think it was Massachusetts, for the master's degree program in archaeology when the airport was under construction. That the documentation was done by these master's students because we had to go and see the grave sites and the necklaces and the different things that were being worn, and to work out a program with the Smithsonian Institute to date the jewelry that was worn. Some of this was in display at the Argyle International Airport Center for the artifacts. Then we had, where was it? The pre-independence music. Yes, I have that also in my presentation. Michael, Baha, Alban Henry, Pat Prescott, the signature song that we would say today, The Right Hand of God. That's a signature song for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And the big band era with Cohen Morris and the Latinaires. And finally, the ones in this century, Kevin Little, Skinny Fabulous, Fireman Hooper, Beckett, in the early days of dance, Tracy Cornell, which I mentioned before, then Anne Ravenna, they did a teaching manual on dance, right into the time now of Maxine Brown and Claydonna Peters, Juanita Phillips, who'd been trying, as he said, there's a program to do this dance throughout the schools. And what has happened is that the children may not dance with the dance festival, but you see them sometimes in the gospel festival or sometimes in other dance groups. And as Michael has indicated, we have to be very realistic in that a lot of students, some people don't realize it, that after the performing arts and the creative arts, a number of students in getting these increased number of scholarships have done design and painting at the Edna Manley School for the Performing Arts. The young lady Stuart, she's now at the ministry, and her segment is to deal with the creative industries. She also did that painting that you will see at the E.T. Joshua Center. That is one of her murals at E.T. Joshua Center. Outside of that, UWI joined together with an organization that Blazer and I have founded to do an exhibition each year up until I think COVID and Sufre stopped us, plus the construction for UWI, to do an exhibition to get all the young designers to come and exhibit their work. And a number of them have done extremely well and gone really, really far in the last 7 years or so in design work. And the production with what they're doing, and it's when they come to my office to tell me, you don't remember me, but it's because we had this thing at UWI. And we moved from just simply the exhibition of books and newspapers, because remember, this generation only knows Searchlight News and Vincent. They didn't have other newspapers before. So you have to introduce that to them. And the National Public Library has now got a new program that they run during the summertime, so that young people can have an opportunity to be exposed. Like some people didn't know you have a Vincentian section at the public library with books and some design. Sometimes they're able to do that. The National Trust sometimes is able to do that exhibition. There's a new NGO that came out, and so they have been trying to do exhibitions every other year, and especially in photography, because now with all the new media that is available, photography is now also back as big business. It used to be a time when you had to, your wedding, you have your thing. Now it is big business for weddings, even though they do them, streaming them, they still do a lot of photography. And then we have, as Michael indicated about the drama festival, these groups, some start in school, but they branch off. And there are a number of them who are in fact studying the performing arts at the Edna Manley School. After we had Mr. Venner and those people went in the first flush and pilling, and then it sort of died down. Then you have a new flush of them, including Darren Andrews and Rodney Small, Ray Jean Baptiste. These are the people that went there. Now Rodney has a academy to teach how to sing, voice training, pan, other instruments, and a new youngster that migrated here, and he started the violin. And you have quite a number of children who are now doing violin. You would have thought, say, when you left here, how many people you knew were playing violin? Miss Robertson, you remember her playing violin in the Anglican church up in the choir loft. There were very few people playing violin. Now, you should see this huge concert that takes place in December every year. And music teachers are there still. They're still doing teaching music. The Music Association, they still teach music. There's still a number of people. You have the Sean Sutherlands and the Dr. Maul, as he is now. They did music. And others who have done music who have not come to the forefront as these have done, because Dr. Maul plays pan, but he also does piano and organ. So there are some people who you may not know because you do not know them, and they're not on Facebook or the popular media, but they are invited to do concerts. There used to be a series of concerts held by former Governor General Dr. Sir Frederick Ballantyne, where he also gave an opportunity for young people to show their skills in music, etc. So as Michael has said, it goes up and down. There's a season when these things happen, and the multiplicity of disciplines that are now available in the school, especially after doing the performing arts became a subject, and I didn't have to fight that much anymore for what they call instructional time. It's now part. You do it for CXC, I think, or CAPE, or one of them, and the other classes that you can get outside of the formal school structure. So I just wanted to bring that because in this step that you're taking to create this Hall of Fame, yes, this is like digging the foundation, and you're going to put in the foundation and then continue to build from there. Because sometimes we take for granted, we see something on TV and you forget how long ago this thing started. But because you just saw it, you think it just happened. It didn't just happen. It took time. If you go through the history of the Screenwriters Guild and all these things, you have to plant the seed, water it, and see it flourish. Thank you.
Wow. Yes, yes, yes. First of all, thank you for rejoining us and continuing on that inspiring presentation. You covered a lot of grounds in your presentation. I have some questions coming up. I just want to ask one question, Ms. Batiste, before I see some questions on the screen, but they're for some of the other panelists. You said in the beginning of your presentation, before you were disconnected, you said that the discussion about the Hall of Fame started a long time ago with the CDC. Is there any ongoing discussion at this time, or it has all ended? And how long may that have?
I don't. I'm a very positive person, so I
Right.
don't see things as things ending.
Right.
Okay?
Good. That's
It
what.
was a
Right. Yeah.
discussion that the Ministry of Culture we had with CDC when people saying, "How do you conserve all these beautiful costumes?" There
Right.
isn't a place to put those costumes. I don't know if Trinidad has a museum with costumes. I doubt that. But you can do what is called, the Minister of Culture in Cuba told me when I was discussing that with him as well back then, a digital magazine,
Right.
so that you can fill that information on a website. And the second thing was in relation to the Hall of Fame. We wanted people not to miss the history of Carnival. Because while everybody is busy talking about the bikini and beads, the persons who are speaking about bikini and beads do not know what Carnival was. Before that,
Right.
So we need to get the information out, and this discussion happened. But like I say, sometimes you have to have drivers.
Right.
You have to have a driver. You have to have somebody who's just going to be at it all the time. And
very good. So true.
And also, you have to have some money. When I hear you talk about the bands in Trinidad, this thing was created in Trinidad.
Yep. Yep.
Right? And so it is their own, and they're going to hold on to it with their 10 fingers, the 10 toes, the 2 eyes, the 2 lips, the 2 feet. They're going to hold on to it. Right?
Well, I don't expect us to be at that level at this time, but it's just for something to look at.
We have a population of 100,000 as against Trinidad of 1 million.
Yeah.
And industry to sponsor.
Yeah, but it's something that we can look at ways and means, because we started something very nice, the Panic Against Crime. That was that's a very good initiative,
It still continues.
Perfect.
The Panic Against Crime continues.
I know. It's that was a perfect thing.
Big sides to the villages.
Yeah. That's a perfect stepping stone that we have there. Yeah. So that was what my question was built around. What's inspiring the children? How are they inspired to get involved? That was what I was about. You're right. So very nice to hear that you say that the discussion is ongoing about the preservation of the costumes and stuff like that, because one of our presenters, Mr. Grant, a masked man himself, he alluded to that, and the actual history is actually fading of the traditional.
Preserve it digitally.
Yeah,
Preserve it digitally. Yeah.
Beautiful. So that's, it's good that we can hear that steps are, are being taken to do that, because that's one way also of preserving our heritage. So that's very good. I don't know if anyone else have any questions for Miss Batiste. Anyone on the stream has any questions for Miss Batiste? She said a lot. I don't want to be the only one. I have a number of questions, but I'd like someone else to. Someone want to come in?
It's so difficult.
Mr. Burke?
I don't know what happened earlier.
Yeah, if you're hearing, I'm impressed by and moved by what we are learning here today. And I'm exactly what all of my panelist colleagues are saying. This is the impetus for Dynamite's cultural organization, curating the Hall of Fame. That all of this history, you know, has to be preserved. There has to be some repository where 50 years, a century into the future, that generation can log in and know precisely where whatever it is they're looking at started. I remember as a young man that, just to give another example, that jab was a thing in St. Vincent and Grenadines. I mean, kudos to our Grenadian cousins for preserving it, but I work with a Grenadian and he was debating with me and denying,
It used to
right,
be the funky band.
exactly.
Hezekiah primarily. People don't know that Hezekiah Beckett's song is an actual person. It's an actual person.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all of this history, the preservation of all of this history, is what the Cultural Hall of Fame is about. Before this is lost, because when we started this, just to give a little insight into the Dynamite's process, we researched this. We reached out to a number of stakeholders and folks who we knew had been involved in culture, and we found, at the very least, the discussions of Hall of Fame go back 50 years, at the very least. We spoke with someone in England who talked about discussions of a Hall of Fame back in the 70s, in the 1970s. This is 2025. We are learning, even on this discussion here, that's about 2.5 hours old. The wealth of history that has come out here, the names that have been mentioned, I mean, things that, I am learning. And if I don't know this and things that I'm learning, I can imagine what the generations after us don't know. I remember Dr. Fraser's program, From Whence We Came. Today we talk about must see TV. That was must listen to radio. that taught us so much about our history, a history that was not taught in school. I don't know if it's now being taught in school, but it was not taught in school. One of the panelists mentioned Dr. Kirby's book, the Rise and Fall of the Black Caribs. I read that after leaving school. When today, progressive and forward thing that should have been on our school curriculum reading list. It was not. So these are the things that we are hoping that this project can correct. That it shows, and we are hoping that that Vincentians, no matter where you are, become invested in the project. That it becomes truly a national project. Submit the biographies, submit the history. One of the things that we are learning too is that a lot of individuals have a lot of this history in their houses, but it's not documented in any sort of national archive. It's not at the library. It's not in the archives. Not nowhere central where any Vincentian can go and access it. So, we are hopeful, and I am inspired, further inspired by just what was mentioned here today. Yes, we still, obviously, from the names that I have learned today, we still have a lot to learn, but we have started the process, and this is what it's about. It's about documenting our history.
Yeah. One thing I don't want to forget to mention, and I don't know if Mr. Pieces remember it, the National Sound Archives. I had spoken to a number of people who do recordings, especially artists, and tell them they should lodge their work at the National Sound Archives because NBC Radio had archives of sorts. Some people never heard Joshua's voice, and they had to borrow a tape, from Anthony Tibbs' father's collection of tapes, the voices of E.T. Joshua, so people can actually hear what E.T. Joshua sounded like. You know, we tend to forget because we grew up in that particular, some of us grew up in that era where we knew Joshua, we knew what he looked like and all of this. But when you're now speaking, like last week, when 2 weeks ago, when Luke Brown had a lecture on Cato, a young man stood up and said, I said, this for me was walking down memory lane. He said, yeah, but I don't have any memory. I didn't even know this. So that Hall of Fame is an archive. It will be
Yes,
a cultural archive.
it will be. Yes, it will be.
Most definitely. Most definitely. Anyone else? Anyone else have anything to say? Mr. Peters, anything you want to add? Anything anyone else? Okay, go ahead, sorry.
The Miss Baptiste is correct. There have been efforts to document the rich cultural heritage of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The Song Archives was an initiative, but a lot of persons don't make use of the National Archives to do research into Vincentian history, heritage, and folklore. And I must take this opportunity to commend the minister. Well, Miss Mary Baptiste, during her tenure as Minister of Culture, those 10 years, she encouraged and facilitated a lot of documentation of our cultural heritage. And one of the more popular series was a series of booklets, 4 booklets called Our Cultural Heritage, which was distributed widely across the country and overseas. And it provided our school children in particular with important information about the history, heritage, and folklore of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. These information are still available at the National Archives, but I don't think enough persons make use of the National Archives as a repository for Vincentian cultural history, heritage, and folklore.
I got you. Yes, Mr. Peters is right, rightly said. Well said. And we do hope with this discussion today and all the knowledge and inspiration which have been shared here and discussed among ourselves, that persons listening would find a lot of knowledge in it, and start thinking about our cultural heritage. And we do hope that not just the Dynamites, but other organizations and individuals would make the effort to preserve our heritage and stuff like that. And Mrs. Robinson, if you have anything wrapping up, anything you want to say, anything you want to add?
Yes, thank you. Going back to the panorama and the steel band in Trinidad, as Sister Rennie said, it's the national instrument in Trinidad. It was invented in Trinidad according to the history. So there's a pride. There's a pride in it, and they would promote it. So in our own context, we have to develop that national pride of what we have, because colonialism had allowed us to dismiss a lot of, even in the way that carnival used to be, and they used to have old mass.
True.
And you would have the stick men and the stilts men and so on. That began to be looked at as something that primitive, not recognizing the meaning, the full meaning of it. So I'm saying that we have to find a way to develop that national pride in what we have, and that will help to build back, some of the interests.
Yeah.
I was also thinking, as it was mentioned, that many of us have aspects of the culture, the history. It's in our homes.
Mm-hmm.
Many of our organizations had made our own little publications. And I remember distinctly Partners of the Americas in its heyday in St. Vincent, that there was a cultural committee and there was actually a booklet that was produced on our heritage. I came across 2 personal copies that I had not too long ago. And I'm thinking that literature like this, should be fed in either to the Department of Culture, to Dynamite, and an appeal made, so that it could help to strengthen what is taking place. But let us take pride in our heritage and promote it.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mrs. Robinson. Mr. Grant, you have any wrapping up? Mr. Grant? Is Mr. Grant still with us? Or he seemed to have left. Okay. Well, I must say that the effort that the Dynamite is making here today and beyond of preserving our heritage through a cultural hall of fame, we have sure gotten an injection here, a very large injection here today into this effort. We have clearly chosen, I don't want to say the greatest person, but some very, 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 very intelligent persons, from persons very, very, very informed of what is happening and what should happen and how it should happen. And we've been very highly educated today. I must say that we've been highly educated by the discussion here today. It's a lot that we have gathered here today. As the Vice President so rightly said, the amount of names that were put out here today. I myself, I don't even know of half of them. I know of some of them, but and the amount of activities that was ongoing about the petroglyphs, the effort to have the reading and to have them established so that persons would know. I would not even, didn't even know that was going on. But that is something that should be public knowledge. So I was so happy and delighted to hear that all these things are going on in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and that we have been making effort to preserve our heritage. However, much more work could be done, and I do hope that the panelists that we have here today would be partnering with us in this effort as we look forward to your continued support and participation in what we're doing, because you guys are very educated in this area, and it would help us go a long, long way. Anyone else? Well, we have gone over.
Rejected, you said there were some questions that persons had written in.
Yeah, I see 2 questions here for Mr. Grant. I was trying to ask if he's on. Both of them are asking for Mr. Grant. 2 questions.
I am still here.
Oh, okay. I was asking for you a while ago. Okay, I have 1 question here for you. Well, 2. One is saying, please ask Mr. Grant if he prefer to see more clothes on the people who play in mass instead of the 2-piece swimsuit with just feathers, and what is his intention is to see happen in the future. You got that?
Design.
Yeah. I think there's supposed to be, I believe there should be more crew, because just exposing yourself is something that I don't really like. And I think the design needs to add a little more to it. But the thing is, how are we going to get people to really make these costumes? Because people don't seem to be interested in coming with markets to really do any work. And this thing involves a lot of work. But my preference is to see more clothes and see, more of the creative aspect, our creative aspect coming up.
Okay.
If I might make a comment,
Sure. Right ahead.
I was after one of our carnivals several years ago. I was on a flight with some Trinidadians who had come to Vincy Mass, and they were like overwhelmed, overtaken. They said they are glad to come because St. Vincent Mass tells a story. And they were very happy about that. So what is the name of the mass band? What is the mass band trying to portray? Would probably depend on how the garments, are made. And I remember many of the names of the mass band would mean that the participants had to dress a certain way. So
Yeah,
perhaps
that's how it
that's
goes.
part of the change in scene. No, that is taken the carnival.
That right.
Yeah, well, see,
I agree with that because that was the question I was going to pose to Puzzle to.
Okay.
What is driving this phenomenon of beads and bathing suit? Is it that this is what the mass consumer wants? This is what the masquerader wants, or is this what the mass designers are designing? So that if the mass designers did not design costumes that were that scantily, will there be a downturn in patronizing that particular band? So which is what's the driver here? The design or the masqueraders demand?
it is more the masqueraders demand. The masqueraders have been seeing things emanating from other countries. I mean, we sometimes get a false sense of pride. You would hear people tell you about Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. But what showcase in Brazil most of the time, where you see these naked things, is people who just carrying the float. But Brazil really do have a lot of costume building. And you see, we don't really see a lot of that. And people now thinking, well, costume is just a whole set of nakedness that is seen when they talk about Brazil and Rio. Now, so a lot of the designers, and some of them opt out because they've been meeting uphill battles and competition with the naked mass, right? So like things drop out, other mass men drop out because they figure, well, this thing gone too far down the road, right? So they drop out because they can't compete against those mass bands that doing it on a business level. So they just buy too little something and put on, and they've been able, because they might have the financial backing, they've been able to promote that, and people gravitate to it.
It's called the era of spandex, beads, and feathers.
Exactly. Designers like my designer, my former designer, Pilling. I would sit down and tell Pilling, no, this is what we want. But the thing is, when I bring a band, when I carry a band forward to Pilling to tell him, this is the band we play, myself and him would sit down and we would do research and we would go through, and then we would try to make the costume we would try to be relative to our team. And most of the time, my team is always some kind of creative team, or something that reflects something of our culture. For instance, when I tell Pilling I want to bring Dance Caribbean, we want to bring Dance Caribbean, and that this nakedness is not part of Dance Caribbean, so we have to do the things relative to our team. When I tell Pilling about I need to bring a band called Legend of the Soca Monarch, things like these, we sit down and we discuss it and we put it on paper. So you notice even players been dwindling now in support, because one, you ain't getting people to come in the mass camp to really play these things And two, players don't have the financial backing to promote as the other bands could promote, and how they could go on social media and do all this kind of thing and being able to get. So, and John Public gravitate to that sort of nakedness, although when you check the cost of the costumes for these naked masks, in comparison to the cost of the costumes for real masks, they're far apart, but people still want to go and play the naked ones than to play the ones that's real mask.
You know, there's another trend that has developed in recent times. My time in Carnival, Monday Mass was a jeans and a t-shirt. But now,
you don't get proper Monday mask. You don't get proper Monday mask. I remember I started my carnival sojourn in 1965 with Paddy Correa and Brian Hawkins and Sam DB. These guys have started Hill Boys, and I started my carnival sojourn there, coming out, Erolina encouraging me to come after asking me to pick jokes, bead, and so on, and chuck them out and string them. And I started my carnival there. And I mean, it was relatively, at some point, it had looked kind of naked, because when I started, I played in my underpants and two flaps and my vest. But that was related to the team that we were playing. Now I don't know if the mass bands really have a team that they play in anything. And those days we had historical, we had fancy and things like that. Now everything is just way, as Blondie Board would call it, way.
Okay.
You don't do anything.
I see.
Okay.
And
even in terms of the calypso, let me talk about calypso. Even in terms of calypso. Now, long ago, you watch a Dimash Grass show. You watch a Dimash Grass show when they had mass, pan, and calypso. You had to fight to get a seat in Victoria Park.
True.
No, nobody going park. You wondering? I talked to Giddy some time ago. Giddy tell me I finished the carnival. I lock off. I'm done completely. Why? Because nobody going to see where you work so hard to build. Nobody. Why? So come on up, come on the heels, come just before proceeds the master show, and everybody just want to go to the nonsense, no real calypso. Calypso supposed to be a messaging song. It's supposed to be the conscience of the masses expressing their views about a lot of issues that is taking place around. That's how we knew things long ago. Now, that ain't happening. The Calypsonians of them don't even have an appetite to make a good food. Because soca take over everything and it gone, and which is just a rhythm and a beat. Hence, there's no need for the musicians either. So we got to be careful. We have to find some way in which we could pull back some of these things.
Okay.
Because the same thing you hear, and we were embarking on this massive tourism drive. But the same thing you hearing out there is where you're going to come and hear. So why somebody want to come and hear that? I notice a shift even in terms of our national festivals. 9 Morning, with Christmas festivities and with Carnival festivities. Now, more people is coming to St. Vincent, going to St. Vincent for Christmas than they're going for Carnival. Where is it?
9 Mornings.
That's not a bad thing.
Because there's nothing to see these days in terms of the mass we produce. And it's a worrying factor.
Not a bad thing. We diversify.
Diversify.
All right. Well said, Mr. Grant. Well said. I have two questions here for Mrs. Robinson Hazel. One is short, and one is a bit, but two questions for you. The first one, the person was asking, why is there, in your opinion, a decrease of the use of medicinal plants and the bush tea in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. You mentioned that in your speech that the medicinal plants, like we don't use them much anymore, and the bush tea and stuff like that. Someone is asking what you think is the cause of that people not use.
Well, in its natural state, when I was growing up, there was always that medicinal garden. You open the back door, and you could pick your basil, your mint, etc., and make that tea. Now, it is not too popular, and the bush is now in packets, so you could buy the packet of tea as such. Then, well, we have other products for breakfast that are on our table. You have coffee. We don't really have the cocoa tea as was prevalent. You have it now in different forms. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So this is what is breaking down some of that some of that culture in terms of our breakfast as such. But you do get it packaged. But in terms of a resurgence in the time of COVID, the benefits of the lemongrass and the other bushes for the bush tea.
Right.
People were using that in terms of building up their
immune system.
The immune system. Yeah.
The immune system
Right.
against
Right.
getting that infection.
Well, maybe we have to keep reminding them of COVID and why they should, because this person is asking why you think people not using it. So maybe, yeah. So that's a good.
Well, the
good.
access is easier if you go and you buy it packaged.
Right.
Like if you have to harvest it from the garden.
Yep.
Right. Apparently, sorry, go ahead.
What has happened now, sister, is that there is now a new industry, the aromatherapy industry. And some of our therapists and masseuses use the mint and lavender in the spa. So that's where you would pay for it otherwise, And
I see.
we also have the emergence of a new industry, Jazidine. She makes the moringa cream. The moringa cream. I use it. It's very, very lovely.
That's nice. Yeah.
Vanilla and coconut. You know how they used to do the coconut during the school holidays? They used to shine up your skin with that, so your skin will look good for Christmas. You know that? Like Christmas for your skin. And this has changed. It's now into the aromatherapy industry, and in making candles now, they add the vanilla to it. They add the cinnamon to it. So it's more expensive than just picking it. We used to have mint in the garden here, mint and lavender. And you pick the mint. Sunday night was mint tea with cow's milk. But now you can go buy peppermint, this mint, that mint, other than growing it in the backyard. But they are
True.
and I can tell you that there's a youngster who he does the teas, and I met a old British guy who was he used to design warships, and when he left, he learned about aromatherapy, and came here, and he was asking about the different bushes and teas that we have. And the Ministry of Agriculture, a lot of people don't know that they have a lot of information. They've done a tremendous amount of work. They have a body of work of the ethnopharmacology of St. Vincent. When I was at the ministry, after I was exposed to this thing about aromatherapy, I asked them, and they have a lot of information on some very specific herbs that we have, the type and what it could be used for, and so on and so forth. And somebody sooner or later that gonna start to mass produce that stuff.
Great to know. Great to know. Well, the person asking that question, I'm sure they've gotten a lot of information there. They didn't say where they're sending the question from. But if you're in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I hope you would have heard what Minister Baptiste said about the Ministry of Agriculture having a lot of information about that. Okay, so I do hope that you would have gotten the answer that you were looking for in that, and I'm sure you would have gotten more. Okay. The other question quickly, Mrs. Hazel, how do you assess the importance of oral traditions and storytelling in preserving our cultural legacies?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
No, it's not loaded. It is 100% question.
Yeah, how do you assess the importance?
I used to hear when I was growing up a saying that sense make before book. Oral telling the stories, and so all of this was the word, the storytellers and so on, and then it came to be written. So it is very important, and people who have those stories, some avenues should be open that they could see them, they could tell them, they could perform them. It's part of the performing arts, and then it could end up being written. I think a lot of my poems that I have, they really came out of hearing situations, and my report of it then would end up in a poem. See, so I rated very highly the oral tradition.
Right.
If I can follow up on that with a question for MP. MP, is there anything within the archives on our oral traditions?
He has written some.
Yes, there's a significant amount of that.
Yeah, you alluded to that, and I remember that.
There's a book. There's a series of 4 publications called Our Cultural Heritage.
Yes.
There's a booklet on our folk songs and patriotic songs. So that material exists. But I think to answer the question, to add more to the answer to the question, is that the socialization process in St. Vincent and the Grenadines would change. Back in the day when we were youngsters, you had the village squares and moonlight games and traditions where you hear your Nancy story and your Jumbie stories. So a lot of our folk tales and traditions were passed on from generation to generation, but by we listening to our grandparents, that whole process has changed. You no longer see people outside on a moonlight night gathering in village squares or village centers.
Netflix.
Yeah.
Everything now is TikTok and Twitter and X and all that stuff.
No, but I was hinting more at at an actual recording, just as Minister Baptiste talked about having to to replay for the current generation the song of E.T. Joshua's voice. Do we have any of that oral tradition documented in audio format, or it's all just and if not, then how do we maybe recreate that?
No, yes, it is documented in audio in audio format. We have several videos and CDs and DVDs done on that. Our traditions. NAM had a series also on that as well. So there is documentation, video and audio documentation of that. Persons must make use of the National Archives. The National Archives is a good repository of Vincentian history. There's a lot of material there which you can access that is available.
Okay.
Excellent.
And we have gone over our time, but our technicians seem to be giving us a little more time. I have another question here. This one is from Minister Baptiste. The questions are coming in now. Minister Baptiste, in your opinion, how does understanding our heritage enhance the sense of community among people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines? How does understanding our heritage enhance the sense of community?
You see, we have to continuously have something like this, talking to people, engaging with people at the community level. For example, I understand they're going to be cultural hubs built in, I think it's North Central Windward, Trumaka, and some 4 places. And the funding was available through an agreement recently signed with the government of Saudi Arabia. And the idea is that people shouldn't have to leave from where they are to go and hear something, to learn something, to encourage them, not only in their band practice and the dance practice and so on, but to also use some of the people that created some of this stuff live out there. Some
True.
of the creators and some of the older people, and some of the older people really look forward to wanting to tell people the stories. I was just in Chester Cottage last week, Saturday,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm listening, discussing with some of the spiritual Baptists. And it's good to learn. I mean, people ask me how I get the information I have. I go and look for it. You understand me?
That's right. That's
We
right.
we
That's
have
right.
come from the same thinking, just click your finger. But you need to engage with the community where you are. Just
That's
this
right.
week,
That's right.
2 young girls came to my office and I looked at them and I said, I know you. She said, yes. But I said, I don't remember your name. She said, well, I used to pass down by you and say, good morning, Miss Pettis. You say, good morning. I remembered their faces and we started chatting. And one remembered um, in the time when I used to do TV news. And
Oh,
I
okay.
had actually said in August, um, good night in the different languages. I had learned a little Garifuna. I had learned from medical students from Cameroon to speak some of the dialect. I had learned from a student in Nigeria. He had taught me a little dialect, and I would say that good night in that particular dialect. And do you know there are people in this place who actually wrote the TV station that I shouldn't be speaking in that?
Hey, why not?
Huh? Do you know
Why
that?
not? Why?
Do
Why
you know
not?
that? And they tell me, don't. And I had said it in French and Spanish and so on.
They don't
And
understand.
they didn't understand. This is a
Yeah.
transmission, the transmission of culture. That's how it's
Yes.
done. And that's
True.
why it was my duty to make sure people remembered about the rain dance and the dance of the big drum
Mm-hmm.
and the dance of the cake. When we talked about that, we went to Carifest in Barbados and so on. People were fascinated because
Yes.
they don't have that. And just last night with a lecturer from Barbados who came at UE to speak about Black history and so on. Vincent, and what he saw, he said, such the interest for him now in wanting to write more, dig more about our history and empowering us to be back as communities. So you don't,
Okay.
because you have community centers. I know community centers that are locked. Why aren't you using them? Where's the leadership within the community? It can't always come from above somewhere. You in the community, you have to care. You have to want to improve your knowledge. You don't have to wait for somebody to come and tell you to do an exam and count how many questions and mark 5 answers. It has to come from you. It has to come from within your soul. Your soul. The soul of a Vincentian. When I had put this sign of Washington Bay, you know how many people wanted to kill that instead of saying
It's
Kingston
the
Harbor?
indigenous,
It's Washington Bay.
it's the indigenous name.
Now we're starting to understand because
Yeah.
we are more exposed. The children can sing the national anthem in Garifuna language. When that started here, Michael will recall, Mr. Peters. He was like, where is she going with this stuff? It's we have it's us. You don't have we're the ones who have to want to be Vincentian, to
Yes.
want to be of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, to want to identify with something special, unique, and different. And we are.
True. True. True.
We are different.
True. True.
Perfectly said.
2 years ago, I heard the Australian government was implementing the native language we taught in schools in Australia. Apparently, there's a different language, the
For the
traditional language.
Aborigines, yes.
Yeah, right. And they were doing legislation to have it taught in schools and stuff like that and throughout the community. I thought that was admirable. Yeah. So same thing Miss Batiste is speaking about there, that, yes. Excellent. So I'm sure that that person question would have been well answered. The questions are still coming in. We have a question for Mr. Burke. We're a bit over time, but we have a question for Mr. Burke, and I see more questions coming in. Mr. Burke, could you kindly elaborate on the induction criteria? That's the question here.
Well, okay. Firstly, it's a minimum of 15 years contributing to the particular field in which the nominee is being sought for induction. Because this requires sustained commitment to the chosen field, and an exemplary track record, consistent with significant contribution over a considerable period of time. Like all halls of fame, induction is based on the inductee's body of work. Hence, there is a requirement, a threshold of involvement that's required, and we chose 15 years, a decade and a half. The next criteria is the nominee must have a connection to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. There must be a fundamental link between the nominee and our country, and that connection can be through birth, ancestry, residency, an extended period of work within the country. But that work must be significant, must be a significant engagement and contribution to our cultural landscape, right? And the prospective inductee's current location is not a hindrance. It's just that it's the work must be of significant cultural resonance for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Next, we have the cultural relevance of the nominee's contribution. The way we look at this particular criterion, this goes beyond mere talent or skill. The nominee's work must clearly be relevant to our culture. This means that it must have contributed to either the development, the preservation, or the promotion of our cultural identity, our traditions, our values. Somewhere contributed to our heritage. Next, the nominees' significant and enduring contribution to the field for which they are being nominated. It must it must have been impactful. It must have some lasting nature to the work. It must be considerable in scope and depth, and their impact on the field. Whether their work continues to be relevant. Whether it was transformative in its time, and continues to be relevant. So those are the principles of the criteria that we are looking for. The nominee's connection to the country, the nominee's body of work, and the relevance of that work to the culture of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And as I said, I think what I said earlier about going beyond just talent to showing how that talent was used in the enhancement of our culture. That's the critical thing. We are not we are not sort of trying to downplay, our talented Vincentians, but it's a combination. It's not just a question of the talent. It's a question also of how the talent was employed for the betterment of our community.
I see.
I hope that answers the questions on the criteria.
Well, that shows how that person listening and thinking because you've had quite an explanation there, and I'm happy that you would have gone into depth to satisfy that person's questions. Well done. There's another question here, but it doesn't say who it's for, but from what it's asking, I do believe it's for Minister Baptiste, because she alluded to having students study at Michael Manley School in Jamaica, and the question is saying, okay, so what are we doing to keep all that talent in the mainstream after graduation? So I think that would be from Minister Baptiste, because my notes here, you spoke about students studying at Manley School in Jamaica, and you
Yeah.
refer to a few of them as,
Which means that this individual has not been following what's happening in St. Vincent. And I need people to not just, this is one of the things that worries me, is that you have to be engaged. Okay, so let's start with Joff Venner. Do you know what Joff Venner does?
Okay. National Youth Band and more.
Okay, so that person is doing something.
A lot of big products come out of that.
A lot of work, a whole body of work of more than a generation.
We got the Scorpions. We got we could call names.
You can call names. These are the people. They're there. Their work is there. Rodney Small.
Yeah, I could call him.
This is the 13th anniversary show he had the last just December. He started off with a show with about 60 of us over at Russell. Darren Andrews, he just had a fire there. And then they have been traveling all over the world as cultural ambassadors, taking the music of St. Vincent, the style of music of St. Vincent. There's a young lady, Stuart, as I just said. She painted that painting on the E.T. Joshua mural, along with the students. She was teaching art at Tommy Saunders Secondary School, and her students, she took them. These are people who have this talent. She took them there and said, "Come, let's start to paint," and they did that painting. You had other students who did the painting at AIA, on the wall at AIA.
I know you said that before, yeah. Got it here.
And now she is now at the Ministry of Culture, responsible for the creative industries, showing people how to convert from the painting that you may do. Because I myself took it upon myself. It's not my duty or my responsibility. I took upon myself to ask people to get calendars made, with the paintings, get them to do portraits and so on. And so you have, I think, Dings Johnson and Calvert Jones, who was from before these guys, and so on. They are doing things. They are available to do things. They are there. Very much there. And as I said, when Prime came out, Rodney opened his academy. What's his name? The Hero. Even though Starliff has the summer school, Hero has opened his own academy, his music academy, to teach band. So there's a lot going on. It just does not make the front page news.
I see. Okay, I hope well, not a caller, but the person who texted in the question, I hope he would have heard and stuff like that.
They're teaching a lot of art, and Mrs. Camille Saunders, she has Yulu Art Center, where they do teaching at different times of the year. Students can go there and do their classes. She has a women's exhibition, and she's been doing this now for close to more than 20 years. It's an open exhibition. You can go, and then she has sometimes a special exhibition focusing on certain themes, thematic exhibition.
Okay, great. Well, we are way out of time. We're way over our time. We want to thank the TV station for giving us extended time. So once more, let me thank you guys for marvelous presentations, all of the educative explaining and explanation and discussion we've had here today. I want to thank you. But personally, I just want to thank you on my heart. I think it has been a marvelous discussion. I think we would have learned a lot, not just the Dynamite, but persons listening and stuff like that. So from here, I will ask our John. We will ask the Dynamite, John Duggan, to do the vote of thanks for us, please.
Good afternoon to everyone, or should I say good night to everyone. The Dynamite Cultural Organization and home of the Dynamite Calypso 10 thank the broadcasting networks, IKTV, Boom 106 FM, the organizers, and the audience for joining us this afternoon. Thanks to Mr. Hilton Duncan, who is based in Canada, for the invocation. Mr. Ramon Diaz, our treasurer, for his opening remarks. Mr. Carlos Providence, our president and moderator. The panelists, Mr. Peter Burke, our vice president and financial administrator. Ms. Rennie Batiste, distinguished lawyer and former minister of culture. And I should also add, who was instrumental in the opening of Dynamite Calypso tent of New York. Oh yes, without her, there will be no Dynamite Calypso tent. Mr. Ricardo Grant, Fancy Mask costume designer. Mrs. Nelsia Hazel, activism and many more. Mr. Michael Peters, cultural officer with the Ministry of Culture. My name is John Duggan, and I'm based in St. Vincent. And I extend my heartfelt thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone for joining us today. We do look forward to another of this inspiring discussion sometime in the future, and we do hope to continue consultations with you on the project on which we are undertaking. Thank you again for joining us, and have a good evening and a pleasant week at work.